Unbelievable. Welcome in on this Monday morning, live from the Grand Hyatt here in downtown Nashville. It's SEC Media Days, even though we're basically doing 3 hours of NFL radio. What's happening? We're happy to have you. Lucas is here. Kirby is here. We got a cast of thousands down at SEC Media Days where things are well underway. This is a very claustrophobic Radio Row situation, but it looks like it's going to be a fun week, and we got plenty of stuff to talk about.
Is it going to be fun? I don't think I like your attitude right now. You're coming in hot in all the wrong ways.
I'm going to have to attack that claustrophobic thing. My God, you're by yourself on
There's
this
so
wall.
much space.
I don't like stuff.
Hey, Grandma.
It's a 6 to 10 feet perpetual policy for me. You
I
know what
got
I'm saying? Like I don't vibe with stuff like this. But
Should I go get the bear spray?
I would like bear spray if
Okay,
you have it.
I got it.
This is a very exciting time for people because this signifies SEC football right around the corner. So don't come in here and sour it with your mood.
I didn't. Robert did it. Robert's back there at Network Control Studio. He's stuck with us for 3 hours a day. You want to tell him what you did? You want to tell him this is your fault? It's not my fault. It's your fault.
Robert's doing a fine job.
When the show was about to start, I got in Buck's ear and said, hello? Hello? I think I've lost you guys. I don't think I have connection. Hello? And Lucas said, really? And I said, no, I can hear you fine. You're up in 3, 2.
It's a great way to improve my attitude. It's just it's a stellar way to go about great people management skills.
Wait, hold on, Buck. Sorry. Are you guys there? Hello? Hello?
I honestly like
a phone breaking up. Can you hear? Well, I'm saying,
stay very, very close to that dump button because I'm not in a radio studio. I'm more inclined to be more relaxed in front of a microphone, and you better have your finger near that button today.
That's fantastic.
Long story short, yeah, that button. That's the button I need. My attitude was fine. DeAndre Hopkins signed with the Titans. Everybody's happy about it. This was something that went down yesterday. It was something that was in the works about the middle of last week, based on my understanding. And Doug Kyed, who broke the news for A to Z Sports, the biggest NFL story of the summer, will join us at 12:20 via Zoom today. We were prepared. You brought me my Phil Steele college football preview. This is not normally a week that I'm a part of. I kind of turn things over to you under normal circumstances because this is your bag.
It's a good reference point.
But I was ready to go. I was prepared for all the college football talk that we were about to do, and then a manna from heaven. The thing that was going to help me get through a week of college football talk is DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Tennessee Titans on a 2-year, $26 million deal. Up to $32 million in incentives is the key. And, of course, we'll take your phone calls all day. 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045 is how you react to DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Tennessee Titans on this 2-year contract. There's a variety of different implications of this, obviously. And, by the way, the contract hasn't been announced as of yet because he's, on my understanding early this morning, he still technically isn't under contract. So for those of you who are saying, when's the press conference? When are we going to hear from him? Why hasn't the team tweeted anything? Why is Jimmy Wyatt tweeting mailbag links and not telling me that DeAndre Hopkins is a part of my team? Because there's some logistical hurdles that they got to work through. But it is the plan for DeAndre Hopkins to become a Tennessee Titan, and everybody, even Mike Vrabel on the golf course, various Mike Keith is tweeting or posting on his Instagram page, nice National Ice Cream Day, and he's celebrating with a cone because nuke to Nashville, all these things. So at this point, it is an inevitability that this player will be on their roster for 2023. And it's one of those stories that, it's reminiscent of Clowney. It's reminiscent of Julio Jones, and I mean that in the sense that it's a huge name. It's a high-profile player who is, Julio's a very, very accomplished NFL football player. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame. Hopkins, I don't know if you could make the case. I don't want to nitpick that conversation today, but, this is as good of a wide receiver as they've ever had, even though he's in the later stages of his career. The energy around it, though, is reminiscent to the time that John Robinson did those 2 deals.
Especially Julio.
Correct. We talked about how some of his worst personnel moves, what ended up being his worst personnel moves, were as popular as anything that he did at the time that he did them. This is being celebrated as Rand Carthon's triumph, right? He got Jeff Simmons' deal done. They kept Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard, and Ryan Tannehill on the roster. They have done everything that they needed to do. They drafted all 6 picks on offense in the upcoming NFL draft, and it's not their fault that the right tackle got suspended for the first 6 games for gambling. They've done everything within their power to address all the different needs that we said they have, and it certainly makes them a more interesting football team. But I think that indisputably, no matter what, however you want to say, does this impact them making it to the Super Bowl? Does this immediately mean that they're favorites in the division? Whatever it means that their wide receiver core just got infinitely better, because you could argue that they were the worst of the 4 teams in the AFC South prior. Now you can argue, I think with great ease, that they are the best, if not most accomplished wide receiver core in the AFC South. You have the necessary weaponry to go out there and secure a playoff spot. And if you secure a playoff spot, by definition, you are in contention for a Super Bowl. You are a Super Bowl contender if you make the postseason. This is a player that gives you an incredible chance to be able to do that.
It's still slightly different from the Julio discussion, because that felt like that move made them Super Bowl contenders, bona fide Super Bowl contenders, to where that was the end goal for that season for the fan base. That's how we talked about it in the media. This seems a little bit different, where it feels like now you're talking about, okay, you can go and compete for the AFC South. And yes, in turn, that on paper can make you a Super Bowl contender by being in the postseason, hosting playoff games. But the tenor of the conversation is a little bit different from when Julio came on, when it felt like they were right smack in the middle of that window.
That was the thing.
And just needed that sort of extra push to put the offense over the top. Julio was supposed to be that. This is more of DeAndre Hopkins coming in to save this wide receiver room, as far as how the Titans fan base is viewing it.
So you think that there's even more expectation, despite the stakes feeling less high, on DeAndre Hopkins than there was at Julio Jones? Or are you saying because of where they were, and they still, like, everything for as wonky as that 2021 season was with the injuries that they had, like, best laid plans for the number 1 overall seed is something that came to fruition, and then they choked. Like, they did all the things that they needed to do despite the path for them to get there being unconventional, and they choked against the Bengals and everything went to hell. But, like, the stakes are lower for this year's team. It feels, though, that people are ascribing more hope to DeAndre Hopkins than was Julio Jones, despite that being a very, very different feeling heading into a season.
Yeah, but I think it's more about the player and where they're at in their career. I mean, there were signs of Julio's decline, right, before he came to the Titans.
The red flags were all there.
Yeah, all over the place. The hamstring, the drop in production in the 2020 season, right, because he came in for the 2021 season. We've talked about DeAndre Hopkins as his game can age better than a Julio Jones. And the last time we saw DeAndre Hopkins on the football field, he was extremely healthy and extremely productive when he came off that 6-game suspension for PEDs. So, yes, the greater big-picture context of the season, very, very different. But when you narrow it down to the player, I do think it's fair to say there are higher expectations around D-Hop than there were around Julio because of the situation coming in.
Man, did you see the graphic that Ari Myrov tweeted out this morning? I think I sent it to the group. It is a ridiculous it's just a ridiculously lopsided level of production that exists in that wide receiver room. So this is courtesy of Get Up this morning. Now, it's been a running joke for several years. It speaks to the state of the wide receiver core that Mike Vrabel, with 12 career NFL receiving touchdowns, has perpetually had more than I think. I mean, it hasn't been like Corey Davis might have had more than Mike Vrabel, but like there hasn't been a wide receiver since then with the Titans that has had more touchdown receptions total postseason and regular season than Mike Vrabel. So they've been, CBS and ESPN, and the NFL ESPN account, all these things have always been citing this throughout the course of the offseason. How many more Mike Vrabel has than the next closest player, who, ironically, just got here?
Chris Moore.
Chris Moore has 8. That's one more than NWI. So they tweet out this they post this graphic on Get Up this morning on ESPN. DeAndre Hopkins, now the Titans wide receiver room and head coach. DeAndre Hopkins, 72 career receiving touchdowns. Second on that list is Mike Vrabel with 12. Chris Moore, 8. NWI, 7. And there is Traylon Burks squeaking in because he just got the 1, bud. It's an absurd thing. And it hasn't changed in 3 off seasons.
That is a hilarious stat.
I mean, it's hilarious. Well,
I mean, honestly, that is an insane number for a linebacker throughout his career to have 12 career touchdowns. I always do a double take when I see that statistic from Mike Vrabel's playing career.
Chris Moore is 30 years old. He has 4 less receiving touchdowns than Mike Vrabel had in his career in the NFL across 14 seasons. So, yes, this infinitely helps them. It's a 2-year deal, which means that you can ascribe value both to this year's team and whatever the future might look like for the Tennessee Titans. Again, the details of the contract are something that we're going to get into coming up next because Ian Rappaport tweeted, again, we mentioned 2 years, 26, but the incentives, which are very, very, I would say, based on his level of production, easy to achieve. Incentives get it up to $32 million, which allows him to cash in the way that he wants to, allows the Titans to fill the most pressing need. Offensive line was the most pressing need heading into this offseason. After that was the wide receivers. You could probably say 1A and 1B. The offensive line is still a bit of a bleep show. But that they did everything that they could at the time, and now this is their kind of, I don't want to say last salvo, but their last best shot at trying to improve this year's team markedly, and they've done so. So with DeAndre Hopkins, it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes for them to get this deal done and what that corresponding move might look like, because there's been no reporting, there's been no information to date on has there been a restructure of hypothetically Harold Landry's contract, or is there a Derrick Henry extension waiting in the wings? Like that contract, for a variety of reasons, they have to work through the logistics of getting DeAndre Hopkins' deal done, but they can't announce him until they have the money to do so. They have to have a corresponding move here, and that's, I think, what's next for people who are paying attention to this. It's not necessarily George Fan, even though he's trying to thirst trap them on social media to get him signed. It's this. I mean, people can see you giving me the wrap-up signal. You want to just tell them?
No, I know.
Okay. We're here at SEC Media Days. We're having a great time. Who's that? I don't know that.
That's Schaefer's voice, I believe.
That's Schaefer?
That's
What are you
Will.
gonna start doing? That's Will.
That's Will's voice?
Isn't he directly in charge of sending people to break?
That sounds like Schaefer's voice.
Don't tell Will that. 615-737-1045 is how you react to the DeAndre Hopkins news. The details on the contract, they're coming up next. The Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, it's coming up, racing through the streets of downtown Nashville, right? Well, not very far from where we are right now at the Grand Hyatt. August 4th through the 6th. It's going to be an absolutely electrifying event, and you're going to want to be there. Lucas and I have gone both years. It is phenomenal. It's not just about the IndyCar races, although it's pretty cool to see cars whipping around downtown Nashville going 200 miles an hour around Nissan Stadium and across the Korean Veterans Memorial Bridge. But it's an incredible event. They've got the racing, they've got food, music, the family fun zones set up for people of all ages to be able to enjoy this incredible 3-day event. You can get your tickets, whether that's single day, 3-day passes, or your premium hospitality to come hang out with us in the Turn 9 Club, the all-inclusive Turn 9 Club. Visit MusicCityGP.com. Welcome back to the Grand Hyatt, live from SEC Media Days. We're hanging out. You can hang out with us, 615-737-1045. That's the number. We'd be happy to have you at any point. Lucas out here with me. We got everybody hanging out. Mickey Ryan's back from vacation. They'll be here, so will 3HL. Live on location, all 4 shows, all 4 days. Yeah, whole party hanging out here at the Grand Hyatt. So, the DeAndre Hopkins, as we do an NFL show from SEC Media Days, because that's basically what's going to engulf this. Although Greg Sankey is speaking today at 11:30, we will carry a portion of the commissioner's press conference as we do some coverage. LSU, Texas A&M, and Mizzou,
yes,
all on the docket for today. So as information or news becomes available from those 3 respective programs, and we'll touch on them a little bit, because obviously there's great intrigue. I would say Missouri is fairly interesting. Certainly not against the other 2, but I think that all 3 have compelling storylines.
If not for just the fact that Eli Drinkwitz is probably going to say something funny, probably going to jab at someone or something, and that seems to garner more attention than what they have done on the football field in his tenure.
So as we wait for Eli Drinkwitz to take shots at people, we will talk about the contract situation for DeAndre Hopkins. So, the deal not yet done, expected to be completed over the next couple of days. They're giving him a 2-year deal. For year 1, it's a base of 12 with incentives to get to $15 million. So the total incentives that he is going to be able to achieve, or would be possible to achieve, would be $32 million. Then you go through the way that the incentives are broken down, and it's very, very attainable goals that they have outlined for him. So based on his production, if he's even a fraction of the player that he is, he should be able to make the kind of cash that he's looking for. So Ian Rappaport had the details. I like that he tweeted it out in a notes app. He probably just got it from one of the representatives for Hopkins, put it in a notes app and tweeted it. So you've got 2 years, $26 million, $3 million available in incentives both years. If he reaches 95 catches, 1,050 yards, and 10 touchdowns, he gets all of it. He gets all of the money that has been structured into this deal. 95 catches, 1,050 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's making bank.
Which this year would mean $15 million.
Correct.
The same as the Odell number before Odell's incentives come into play.
Here's the way that it's tiered, all right? 65 catches is his first incentive in that category, $250,000, up to $500K if he gets 10 more. If he catches 10 more balls, $750. If he gets to 85, he gets $1 million if he achieves 95 catches or more this season. It's tiered that same way for yardage, 750, 850, 950, 1,050 is the way that that's structured. Touchdowns, 4, 6, 8, 10 is the way that the incentives are based.
So last season, Hopkins, playing in 9 games after the PED suspension, had 64 catches, 3 touchdowns. The year before that in Arizona, he played in 10 games, hampered a little bit by injuries in 2021. He had 42 catches for 8 touchdowns.
It should be achievable. It should be achievable if, again, relative to expectation, DeAndre Hopkins, at the mean average version of DeAndre Hopkins, that should be easily achievable because he has only dipped below 1,000 yards, I think it's 4 times in a decade-long NFL career. He was under 1,000 his rookie year. The year after his first Pro Bowl, I think. So 2015 was his first Pro Bowl. 2016 is the year that he was a little less, but just short. It was like 950 yards in 2016. Then the past 2 seasons, he has had the hamstring injury that cost him a significant amount of time. He had the 6-game PED suspension. But even last year when he came back, we've talked about this over and over again because it has been the summer of D-Hop. Dude was fine. Like, watching DeAndre Hopkins last year, going back and seeing tape of it when he was available to them. Now, maybe it's a little easier at 30 years old when you miss the first 6 games and you come in, you're a little more fresh down the stretch. But still, he is a hugely productive player. 96 targets, 64 catches, 717 yards, 3 touchdowns for DeAndre Hopkins in 2022 that would be greater than any Titans receiver, not pass catcher, but receiver last year.
And there was a bit of a revolving door at the quarterback position in Arizona. I know Murray's ACL tear didn't come until late in the season, but I'd have to go back and see exactly how many games Kyler Murray played. But Colt McCoy definitely got his games in 2022 throwing to DeAndre Hopkins.
And so this is the point, right? There's several points to this. Again, we have a whole week to kind of dissect this before training camp gets underway. This elevates no matter who the quarterback is. So as you kind of try and, all right, think of all the different things that we've broken down in the course of the offseason, right? The quarterback situation is complicated. You have a year left of Ryan Tannehill on an expiring deal. If you can avoid an extension, if you can avoid keeping him around longer at a higher number and have a peaceful transition of power, for lack of a better term, to a rookie quarterback contract, this gives you a buffer on both sides of things. It helps bring up Ryan Tannehill's game. It helps elevates whomever the quarterback would be, in theory, if they were able to move on from Ryan Tannehill at the end of the year and start the Will Levis or Malik Willis portion of the Titans era, for lack of a better term. 615-737-1045 is the number. Look at that. All kind of celebrity sightings out here. Adam Vingan is at SEC Media Days. It's like seeing a ghost. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Ryan in Lebanon is next.
Hey, Buck, man, love the show.
Thanks, buddy.
So with the D-Hop signing, what does it mean for like a guy like Colton Dow, who's trying to make the roster? Does that help him or does that hurt him? And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Well, it helps their depth. It hurts who's ever on the bottom of the depth chart, right? I mean, that's just the way that you look at it. Now, I'll wait to pass any kind of significant judgment until I've seen Colton Dow in a training camp, at least, until we've seen him play in a couple of preseason games. But, yeah, whomever you want to put at the bottom of the depth chart, whether that's Colton Dow, who wasn't a lock pre-D-Hop, right? Like, there was nothing guaranteeing that Colton Dow was going to make the roster as a seventh-round selection. In fact, it's quite often, or it's quite common for those guys to miss the cut. So I think you look at Colton Dow. Now, maybe it means that Colton Dow is a better option, and that, it makes somebody like Nick Westbrook-Akina. Nick Westbrook-Akina is not guaranteed a roster spot here by any stretch of the imagination. He's on a one-year deal. So, like I said, it betters your depth immediately, and, yeah, it's not great for guys at the bottom of the depth chart, but it's that's the production, that's the kind of business that they're in at this point. You understand, whether that's Colton Dow, NWI, Chris Moore seems like he's probably more secure, but like none of these dudes beyond Traylon Burks and Kyle Phillips should feel any kind of real security about their roster spot pre-D-Hop.
Dominic on the F&M Bank chat says, hearing he's got a 95 reception incentive, does this signal we are planning to throw the ball more? When's the last time a Titan had that many receptions? And I will have to double check.
Derek Mason is still their all-time single-season receptions leader.
2004, Derek Mason had 96 catches, just a hair over that 95 mark.
That's Titans era.
Titans era,
That's
yes.
Titans era. So
there are Oilers with a higher number.
In the last, 25 years of football.
Yeah.
This will be their 25th season.
Charlie Hennigan in 1964 had 101 catches, which for that era is insane.
Wild. That's literally chuck it up, Charlie's down there. Bleep it, Charlie's down there. Except, instead of Justin Jefferson, it's Charlie Hennigan. I think that I do think it is worth paying attention to. It is a signal. One, his presence on the roster, regardless of how the contract was structured, he's not coming here to block. This is not a scenario in which you pitch DeAndre Hopkins and say, hey, bud, we're going to throw Derek a little flare pass out of the backfield, and you're going to get downfield and you're going to clear the way for him. Now, maybe you do that every once in a while, and that's fine, but, this is their pursuit of him is a sign that they're taking their need to upgrade their passing game more seriously. Two, correct the way that it is incentivized for him to be able to contribute in a meaningful way, and I mean as substantive a way as any Titans wide receiver in the history of the last 24 years of this franchise, then yeah, it is a sign that they are more committed to modernizing the offense is probably the wrong word.
I think the better way to phrase it is just taking the onus off of Derrick Henry, taking the complete burden of the offensive production off of Derrick Henry's shoulders, because that was essentially what the case was in 2022.
That's what they have to do.
Yeah, I know. Could you make an argument that the Titans relied more on Derrick Henry to produce on offense than at any point in his career? I know what got them to the AFC Championship in 2019, but just as far as what they had on the outside and the way defenses were able to devote the attention to Derrick Henry, and yet still it felt like first down, handoff Henry, second down, handoff Henry. I need to check and see.
If you look at 2021 prior to the injury, obviously he missed half a season. But
yeah.
If you look at the usage rate,
yes,
in the first 9 games that Derrick played, it was off the charts.
Yeah,
like we were all looking around like this does not feel sustainable at all. But he was the only thing that was working, right? That was there, and understandably, Mike Vrabel does it from time to time. He's like, I promise, guys, like when we hand the ball to him so often, it's because he's a really, really special player. Like, I promise you.
He was well ahead of pace to hit 2,000 yards again, be the first to do it in back-to-back seasons before that injury.
It was a back for any other human being. It is a back-breaking pace that they had him on in 2021. So again, by percentage, I think 2021 you might find a higher volume of, hey, bleep it, hand it to Derrick at that point. Now 2022, obviously, that was, again, their best source of offense. And you saw the strain of that, whether it's 6 fumbles across the course of a season in ways that we are not accustomed to seeing. Not even Derrick Henry fumble, because Derrick Henry has had fumbles in seasons, not quite at that rate. But he is also, it's never been like, okay, he's a turnover problem. He cost them a game against the Jacksonville Jaguars last year. Like, it was a legitimate issue. And, he he did things like take the sleeve off in the middle of games because, okay, if there's any percentage chance that that's making it slip a little more than I'm used to. Then,
it was like Gostkowski. Remember Gostkowski with the sock?
Oh, yeah. Like, the mythical sock, right? It's just like things that you laugh at people for posing on Twitter, like Derrick Henry should take off the sleeve at halftime or something like that. Like, they were resorting to that because they had no idea how to fix the problems that they were having other than, okay, we're just going to keep handing it to Derrick Henry. You could tell how much more that got easier when Treylon Burks was in the lineup. Now, they were without I will say that they were basically without Kyle Phillips for the entire season. I understand that he did play in more games than just the Giants game, but he was a non-factor for all but one game, shall we say. I think that when you look at what they are trying, they had a plan to try and alleviate the burden for Derrick last year, and it all went to hell because Treylon Burks got hurt, Phillips got hurt, Chig couldn't crack the lineup until basically November, and by then they were already entrenched in the way that they were playing football, and by November, the slide hadn't really started yet. They were still a 7-3 football team halfway through the month of November, and then everything, most notably, went straight to hell. No speed bumps. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. We'll be talking about this throughout the course of today, obviously, as we broadcast live from SEC Media Days. We will do SEC football news. I felt bad for you that this broke in the middle of – this is typically your week on the show.
Oh, don't feel bad for me. DeAndre Hopkins is a Tennessee Titan. Believe me, I did not read that news and then hang my head like everybody else. I'm looking forward to seeing Nuke in two-tone blue.
Well, like I said, it makes them so much more compelling. It makes them so much more compelling. Now, I did think it was interesting, and I had this pointed out to me by several people on primetime, how much the conversation around him shifted as soon as the news was announced. It was no longer, think about how much more competitive the Patriots would be in the AFC East that they signed DeAndre Hopkins. It's, the Tennessee Titans, this is where the wide receivers go to die. It was as blatant I want to call it like a sports dog whistle almost as anything that you've seen, because the way that this team gets covered by places outside of Nashville or outside of the Southeast, for a lack of a better term, it makes me cackle because it feeds the conspiracy theory that so many of you are right to talk about.
What conspiracy theory is that?
That everybody outside of Nashville hates the Tennessee Titans.
No, I don't think hates is the appropriate word.
Well, I say hates because I'm talking about television networks and they don't rate.
Right. It's more of an
rating,
more of
rate,
an apathy,
hate.
more of an apathy.
Apathy, correct.
But yeah, dismissive. Kirby says that's a good way to put it. And the irony of it is, how much more interesting is DeAndre Hopkins on the New England Patriots, just from a football standpoint, versus on the Tennessee Titans? Like, is it that much more intriguing? I know it's the AFC East, and suddenly the Patriots are a player along with the Bills and the Dolphins and the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. But just from a personnel standpoint, if you take the logos away and everything, like, is it that much more interesting to see him as a New England Patriot with Mac Jones throwing him the football?
Well, I would say that, okay, objectively, now you can't remove the logos from it, but I understand what you're saying. Like, objectively, all right, the New England Patriots, historically, I mean, in the last 20 years of football, they've been the best franchise in the NFL.
Yeah.
Full stop. Bill Belichick, coming off one of the dumbest decisions of his career with the offensive coordinator situation, hiring Bill O'Brien, the former head coach of this player, who notoriously had a very, very sour ending. I mean, from a storyline standpoint, I would say objectively, yes, they are more storyline interesting. Football-wise,
nobody's
no.
debating that.
Football-wise, no.
Right.
I don't think so, because I think the combination of Burks, Henry, at this stage of his career, Ryan Tannehill in a contract year, which, whatever, if you believe in that kind of stuff, or if you don't, like, there is quantifiable evidence to say that football players or professional athletes produce more in contract years, whether they're trying harder or not. That just seems to be the case. And then the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, who is famously one of the most accomplished football players of my lifetime, regardless of position, coming here, a place that doesn't really go for the wide receivers that way, and when they had one, let it walk in a very, very famous and publicly ugly fashion. So I would say from a football standpoint, this is the more interesting fit. There are better parts and pieces on the Titans offense than are the Patriots, from quarterback to running back. The offensive. Speaking of Derek Mason, hey, well, I can't talk to you right now. This is deeply unfortunate. Derek Mason and I have a complicated relationship. He did. Kirby, turn your microphone on. Tell people what happened instead of yelling at me off mic.
He let the bird fly there, and I was jealous because I was wanting to do that first, but he beat me to it.
Do you know?
You had all morning to do that, Kirby.
You guys weren't here all morning. I've been here since 3:30.
Thank you for your service. Derek Mason did walk. The Titans single-season receptions leader just walked by the table.
Another receiver that they just let walk.
Yeah, well, that's true. Again, it's a complicated relationship that this franchise has with that position. But yes, he did just walk by and give me the bird. I started as his intern when I first started working here in Nashville. I was Derek's intern for the longest when he was when his first stint in local talk radio. Do you know the Titans receiver that came closest to breaking his single-season receptions record? I bet it was AJ. It's not. Oh, actually, I think I looked this up recently. Is it Kendall Wright? Yep. 94 catches for Kendall Wright in his second year as a pro. AJ's highest mark here was 70. Well, again, it wasn't volume, right? 2019, AJ's rookie year was Derrick Henry going crazy. Like, that was the full, like, ascension, true ascension. Derrick Henry was a player in the NFL. Derrick Henry was somebody who was kind of still trying to establish himself, I would say, at the time. And the ascension of Derrick Henry happened basically at the midpoint of the 2019 season, basically when they made the quarterback change. But yeah, Kendall Wright. I remember thinking the Titans had something in Kendall Wright. He didn't, but he didn't get to the second contract, top 10 pick. But in that second year, Kendall Wright was a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver. Yeah. So, 94 catches for Kendall Wright. Just the irony of me sitting here singing Derek Mason's praises only for him to walk by the table and give me the bird. 615-737-1045. I'm going to go fight him during the commercial break. Coming up next, we are going to give you a little SEC football. Yes, Lucas, who are we going to preview first and foremost? And honestly, I think it's probably the most No,
I don't know.
It's not even the most interesting team of the day.
I don't know. It might be. No, I think I agree with you that they would not be. But one big thing on LSU football for 2023 is Brian Kelly and his 3 player representatives are here at the Grand Hyatt.
That's coming up next. The Gambling Clinic, if you are somebody who has experienced issues with gambling, if you are a loved one, as a matter of fact, have experienced issues with gambling, then this is a great program for you to explore. Established in 1999 at the University of Memphis, the Gambling Clinic is the oldest operating clinic specifically focused on gambling treatment and gambling addiction. The vast majority of people gamble for fun without issue, but about 5% of people report having problems at home because of overextending themselves or other issues that can arise if gambling is something that you've identified as a problem for you. Or maybe you haven't and you need some help to do so. The Gambling Clinic is the best resource for you to find out how do I best identify those problems that you can run into, not to discourage you from gambling, but to make sure that you can do so in a healthy way. TheGamblingClinic.com is where you can find out more information about this incredible program. This project is funded by the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. I love it.
That was awesome.
Welcome back. Well, he's got actual timing. I mean, Bert was, he's a sensitive guy. We've talked about this before. And it's I like to tease him because I like to say something just mean enough to him to see a little bit of hurt in his eyes, so I know that I've gotten at least a kind of close to the bone. But we were talking about this last night, and I was bitching about somebody who was bad at their job, and he said, "Well, you yell at me all the time." And I said, "Well, I think yes, it was Kirby. you are correct, Kirby." But I said, "No, I only tell you you're bad at your job. I don't actually think you're bad at your job." Moments like that are why. Well,
that's fantastic.
No, now I hate you again. All right, one big thing about the LSU Tigers. We're down here at SEC Media Days. We have yet to talk about SEC football because DeAndre Hopkins signed with the Tennessee Titans yesterday, but we will do this in every 45 segment today, and including at 11:30 when we carry a portion of SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey's press conference, given that he is, I would argue, if not the most important figure in the future of college football, top two. What is the one big thing that you are going to focus in on for the LSU Tigers, coming off an incredibly productive first season for Brian Kelly and that staff?
Yeah, so we'll do this all week with every team based on who's here on that particular day. One big thing, question, statement, I mean, literally anything.
Just
for
don't
LSU.
Just don't tell Scott Van Pelt. It's one big thing.
That's
is
right. That's right.
What do you mean that's right?
And I thought I was so smart coming up with that. For LSU, can they stay ahead of schedule? They are ahead of schedule. Year one under Brian Kelly. If anybody's telling you they predicted an SEC West title, they are lying to you. Better than anybody expected. So will the ascension continue in year two? That natural progression would be an SEC championship, right? You get to the SEC championship game. The next step would be to go win it. The next step would be a college football playoff berth. And I think it's completely fair to view LSU as national championship contenders this year. Jaden Daniels comes back with a wide receiver core that includes Malik Neighbors, his lead receiver last year. Can the defense go from above average to good to great, so to speak? I think Harold Perkins has the potential to be the most productive in college player on defense in college football this year.
People in the NFL are talking about him like he's the next Will Anderson.
I completely agree. Like, freshman year, Harold Perkins, it was very much like, okay, see the ball, go get it.
Yeah.
Right? The more he evolves and develops as a cerebral player on the defensive side of the ball, which will be on him, the scarier he's going to be in 2023 and in 2024 before he goes to the draft. They return a ton on the defensive line. They probably need to improve in the secondary, where they call themselves DBU, but I think Harold Perkins can be as dominant as any player on both sides of the ball this year throughout college football. Mason Taylor injured in game one against FSU last year, a guy that can come back to help that defense. So everything is there for LSU to become a contender in 2023 under Brian Kelly. One big key for me is special teams. That was a disaster for them last year. They fired their special teams coordinator. Special teams lost them the FSU game in week one. I wouldn't say it lost them the Tennessee game, but it certainly didn't help.
It did not help.
Remember that botched kickoff?
Correct.
I mean, punt return for a touchdown they allowed. Yeah. Like, everything went wrong in that
It felt
regard.
like it was spiraling for them, just in general in that game.
Yes, and their new special teams coordinator is a name that Tennessee fans will be very familiar with, John Jensick, who was the defensive coordinator under Butch Jones. He's been the defensive coordinator in the past at Georgia. He comes in as the special teams coordinator for LSU. So this is a fascinating team, and I'm glad that we're going to see them here. I believe, Brian Kelly is the first head coach to step up to the podium here at Media Days.
At what time?
Let me pull up the times because Greg Sankey will speak first.
That's fine. While you do that, the thing, again, I'm most curious about their offense. I want to see that progression from Jaden Daniels. And looking at Phil Steele's preview for this year, he cites on the offense that they had just 26.5 points per game and 368 yards per game last year after losing a 1,000-yard rusher in their quarterback. So at this point, how they utilize him as a rusher as well as a passer is going to be a huge focal point for Brian Kelly and that offensive staff this year. And the thing, you bring up their defensive backs, and they have consistently produced quality NFL caliber talent. But again, that cohesion that you're looking for as far as not necessarily okay, he's a talented player. He has potential. He's a high-level recruit, all the, top-flight athlete, all these different things. But the cohesion of that defense is the thing. Communication is something that's going to be critical for them, especially in the back end, because they just can't give up as many explosive plays as they did. That was, I think, the biggest thing for me, at least early with LSU, is I was not accustomed to watching an LSU defense play and allow that kind of offensive production by other teams. Now, that's the state of the game right now. And I just cited numbers in the NFL that would make you look around and say, I'll take 24 points per game or whatever it is, 26 points per game. But, yes, you understand that LSU has to occasionally stop. You don't have to stop people as often in college football as you used to, but certainly from time to time it does help.
Jaden Daniels back along with 7 other starters on the offensive side of the ball. Like you said, he was their lead rusher last season. So I don't know how sustainable that is, but Jaden Daniels, one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks in all of college football this year, returning 8 starters on offense. Mike Denbrock back as the offensive coordinator, was hired away from Cincinnati by Brian Kelly. We had this conversation last week, I believe, building a program versus building a team, where Josh Heupel has to show us that he didn't just build one team at Tennessee in 2022, that he's building a program that can continue to ascend. Brian Kelly has only ever built programs everywhere he's been, no matter how little time he spent there. Central Michigan to Cincinnati to Notre Dame, he only ever built programs that, regardless of the personnel, you knew what their style of play was going to be, what their identity was going to be, and that they're probably going to win double-digit games in that particular year. At LSU, he just did it way faster than anybody thought possible, and obviously the shortcomings were on full display in the SEC championship game, blown out by Georgia. Kind of just choked the life out of them in that game.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, staying ahead of schedule. That's the focus for LSU this year. They should expect to be back at the SEC championship game. I mean, why shouldn't they? They should expect to be college football playoff contenders. When you return your quarterback in the core of what you accomplished last season, then, yes, the expectations are rightfully sky high in Baton Rouge.
Expectations are a funny thing. We should ask Jimbo about expectations. He'll speak to somebody, probably will. 615-7. Oh, do we get to ask questions? Can I ask questions?
Yes, to your heart's desire.
Oh,
I believe the podium, the big podium, is behind this wall behind us on the other side of it.
I actually do have questions for many of these coaches. 615-737-1045 is the number. The Titans signed DeAndre Hopkins. We are going to get back into the story that is around that, and their ceiling with him on the roster in that wide receiver room. What is it? You can weigh in, 615-737-1045. You can also interact with the show on the F&M Bank chat. Robert says the numbers are big, understandably so. So if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, throw a like on the video. While you're there, we would be grateful for you that way. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. Free agent wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins is signing with the Tennessee Titans. The news first reported by Doug Kayed of A to Z Sports, Diana Rossini of ESPN adding that the deal will be completed over the next few days. Ian Rappaport with the contract details. 2 years, $26 million, up to $32 million with incentives. The 31-year-old caught 64 passes for 717 yards and 3 touchdowns in 9 games in 2022 with the Arizona Cardinals. More details about the NCAA's penalties handed down to Tennessee from the recruiting scandal under former head coach Jeremy Pruitt came out over the weekend. Vols will pay an $8 million fine, go on a 5-year probation with 28 scholarships reducted, and will have all 11 wins from the 2019 and 2020 seasons vacated. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome in. We're here at SEC Media Days, hanging out. Hope you're feeling right and living well. We're having a good time. A lot of people walking around. Grand Hyatt's starting to fill up here in downtown Nashville. And we are going to be here today through Thursday, 615-737-1045. Commissioner Greg Sankey is going to speak at 11:30. We'll carry about 10-15 minutes of that press conference live, I think. Yeah, that'll be fun. Of course, we're talking about DeAndre Hopkins. That happened yesterday, signing with the Tennessee Titans. Well, I say intent to sign with the Tennessee Titans. He has not yet signed a physical contract, so nothing to get too tense about.
T's to be crossed, I's to be dotted.
So I would say not literally not signed, sealed, and delivered, but the intent to sign with the Tennessee Titans is there. I feel
he has tweeted the words "tighten up."
He has. That's honestly like I can't do any more for you than that. Well, he's not tweeted it. He said it on Threads. No, he did.
No, he tweeted it.
He did go to Twitter afterwards. Kirby's throwing up.
It's all the same.
Hands in the air. No, it's not. Threads is better. It's a nicer place. You should try it.
I refuse. I will not get a Threads.
Okay, that's fine. Nobody's making you. Anyway. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. We'd be happy to have you at any point. What is the ceiling for this professional football team now with DeAndre Hopkins in the fold? I've talked about this before, and I don't know that we don't really do record predictions. You seem to have just as much interest in it as I do, if not for the same reasons.
Generally a pointless exercise.
Yeah, it's, of all the things that we could talk about, going week by week and giving you what our final record for the Tennessee Titans is going to be is not something I'm interested in doing.
I think it is a somewhat useful thing to do when you look at the college football world as far as putting games into categories of should win, unlikely to win, and maybe toss-ups. But, yes, in the NFL, it is largely a useless exercise.
And especially in college football where the losses just do matter that much more. I think that's something you have to consider, and all the different things that go down in the middle of that, where people like Josh Pate are actively advocating against expansion because you want to keep the strength of the regular season. It's the most important regular season, I would argue, in sports. I think most people would argue in sports.
Still important.
Anyway, DeAndre Hopkins and the ceiling for this particular team. You and I have talked about it. I have zero expectation. Pre-Hopkins, zero expectations for them whatsoever. Like, I'm going into this season saying, okay, I don't know that they're necessarily in contention to win the division. I don't know that they're not. I just kind of want to see how this experiment that they're trying with a new general manager plays out. And at that point, come what may. If they're interesting, great. If they're not, we'll bitch about it, and the circle of life goes on and on. But now, expectations should be raised. They've added a premium player at a critical position, arguably their greatest position of need, certainly since the post-draft and initial free agency waves. in a weird kind of time where free agents like this aren't typically available. But, yeah, you go from no expectations to saying this is a team that should be willing to, or that people should look at more aspirationally. And yet I see people at least some people on social media, Titans fans on social media, kind of running from those expectations. Just saying don't do things like pick them to win the division. Don't do things like say the Titans are now, a Super Bowl contender or whatever the case may be. But I think that the expectation should be for them to compete for the division, and this makes them as competitive as they have been at any point. The expectation is now for them to win the AFC South. I did not have that expectation of them previously. That's the way that it's changed for me. I don't know if Titans fans out there feel similarly, but as somebody who's going to be tasked with covering them for this upcoming season, I have expectations that I'm now covering a team that has legitimate aspirations, believable aspirations. They may have always considered their aspirations legitimate, but believable aspirations that they can win the AFC South.
That's probably the biggest thing that this move did, right, was just make those aspirations known across the league, where we knew here in town that there will never be a season with Mike Vrabel as the head coach where the ultimate goal is to win every game that they play in and to compete at the highest level they possibly can. I feel like this move has solidified that for people around the league, saying, okay, all right, not a rebuild, not a renovation, whatever our words we wanted to use. Clearly the Titans are going into 2023 with the idea of this is a team that can contend for their division, taking a swing at DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe we can settle on, we've been debating all those R words, reconstruct, renovate, rebuild, remodel. How about revamp, Kirby says? How about rebuild on the fly? That's just what this team's going to do, right? When they're not
Bleep it, we'll do it live.
Exactly. That is literally what this is, right?
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, kind of.
Rebuilding on the fly. Going to be as competitive as we possibly can without taking
at any given point.
Any steps back, or mitigating the steps back that we have to take as much as humanly possible.
Accepting or intentionally holding themselves back. Like doing things that would be to the detriment of the competitiveness of the football team. Right? That's something that's never going to be in question around here. And you can question it with several, maybe not coaches, but you can definitely question it organizationally around the NFL. I think, the Bengals, pre-Joe Burrow, notoriously, the Chargers, organizations that maybe don't invest in at quite the rate that you expect, even if there's a salary cap, ownership who actively try and win championships as opposed to just trying to get the best bottom line on their particular investment. That's a real thing.
Who is that this year? Who can we most quantifiably say is intentionally taking that step back to try and set up for a catapult into the future?
Arizona, based on their drafts, their draft capital acquisition strategy. Like, they may not be, because they know that Kyler's, MIA for the foreseeable future.
Yeah,
they know
on a huge contract.
Yeah, they know what they're up against. They drafted a quarterback this year, the kid out of Houston, but that's not something that that's not going to vault them into a level of competitiveness that they wouldn't be able to achieve with a backup quarterback X, veteran quarterback X, right? So I think at this point, Arizona may not be doing it intentionally. Their hand may be forced because of their quarterback situation.
Okay, who's been the most intentional about it then? Houston in recent years? With the David Culley and the Lovie Smith, where it's like everybody knows what's going to happen there, right?
That's ascribing more of a plan than I think I'm willing to give to the Texans.
It's too much credit to say.
Honestly,
say they were tanking is giving them too much credit.
Miami. I think Miami is the most public.
Well, where they're literally investigated for it.
Yeah. There's litigation. There's ongoing litigation and NFL, league investigations. There have been consequences for tampering. There's been all these different kind of things around the Dolphins. I would say Miami most actively. I can make jokes about the Chargers or Bengals in previous years, but no, there's quantifiable evidence that Miami was doing something nefarious, even if the Brian Flores lawsuit hasn't been completely metered out just yet.
So the Titans will never be in that stratosphere of a discussion, right? And I feel like this move, hopefully has brought that into light for a lot of people around the league that just blindly and probably lazily look at, they picked a quarterback with the 33rd pick. They got him at good value. He thought he was going to be a top 5, top 10 pick. Clearly they're rebuilding for the future right off the Titans for this year. I feel like this brings that more into light for folks now that is never going to happen under Mike Vrabel.
No. That's the kind of, again, I did not have expectations of them other than that they would try and be competitive. that they would try and win as many football games as humanly possible, that they would field the best version or the most competitive team of whatever it is that they have at their disposal, and that, that may vary from week to week. Like they lost 7 straight, and I would still describe them more often than not as competitive. They were competitive in the last game of the year against the Jags. They were competitive in games like the Bengals, even if things got away from them. Like, there was that there, even if the result felt like the sky was falling, and it ultimately did. 7 straight losses is the definition of a collapse. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. What is your expectation? How have they changed? Have they changed at all? Do you feel the same about the Tennessee Titans? I can't imagine you would. But if you do, why is that the case? I would very much like to hear somebody explain that one to me. But if your expectations for the Titans have changed by nature of this intent to sign, it's not a signing just yet. He's not under contract just yet. But their intent to sign DeAndre Hopkins, we would be happy to hear from you on the phone lines here live at SEC Media Days or in the F&M Bank chat.
I really am curious about the loftiest expectations fans have, right? Like, again, we talked about Julio as it was Super Bowl. It was primed for a Super Bowl run. Going into, you could argue against that however much you wanted, but that was the overarching theme around the fan base, right?
Didn't Rhett Brian at Titans Radio make like a 4 horsemen
Oh yeah, that promo
like
running.
a 4 horsemen promo.
Yeah, for Julio, Tannehill, Henry, and AJ Brown.
And then the collection of those skill position players, I think, played less than less than 100 total snaps together.
So I'm curious to hear the loftiest of expectations for Titans fans. There's going to be those that say Super Bowl, but I feel like that's not going to be the blanket expectation for the fan base.
I think about it like the Vols last year. Like, which nut job was going to call us and say that the Vols were going to win 11 games,
right?
And then they ultimately went on to win 11 games.
Yeah.
And we would have laughed in your face.
We would have.
We would have absolutely laughed in your face.
Although I want to bring this up every time that's brought up, that Blaine Bishop did say over the air several times 10-2, 10-2, 10-2 leading up to that season, and that is exactly what they turned out to do. So I do have to give Blaine credit on that one.
They do like to call their shot on Blaine and Mickey. I know I have to run. Don't get in my ear and tell me I have to run. You back there in the shadows. Can I send you to the shadow? Well, this is the most shadows you've ever been, I guess.
It is very shadowy in here, but on the other side, we're going to take your calls. Phil and Jeremy, you're up next on the Buck Rising Show.
The Tennessee Men's Clinic, one of Nashville's staples. No question, if you are somebody who is getting up there in age, you're noticing changes in your body, perhaps things like erectile dysfunction or something that you're dealing with, but you don't know where to turn. The Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to help you with that process. They want to help you understand that you have that support system in place to make sure that you can adapt to those changes and get you back to performing like you haven't in years. They've got 2 locations, one in downtown Nashville, the newest office in Cool Springs, and their experienced staff will help you find a treatment path that makes the most sense for you as an individual, because no one-size treatment when it comes to ED fits all. The TennesseeMen'sClinic.com is where you can go for more information. That's the TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. That I hope people can hear that. Did people hear? Did the Nashville radio audience hear me say that I hate you, Robert?
Say it again, just in case they didn't.
Well, I want them. It's not a go bleep yourself San Diego type of situation, but I do need you, Robert Walsh, to know that I do individually hate you. Welcome back to SEC Media Days.
Just a ray of sunshine.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we can't do the show any other way at this point. This is how we have to operate. It's unfortunate, but this is the case. Greg Sankey is getting ready to speak here at SEC Media Days, where there is some news about apparently next year's location. And if I heard the location correctly, then there is a degree of pandering here that I cannot wait to make fun of, but we will get to that momentarily. We got your phone calls on DeAndre Hopkins. Has this raised your expectations for the Titans at all? Jump on 615-737-1045. Phil in Gallatin is up next.
Hey, Buck, thanks for taking my call. Happy Middle Light to you and Lucas today. Hope y'all are doing all right.
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to be negative Nelly here, Buck. I'm just going to be honest. I wanted Hopkins to come in and do good, but I'm just telling you, I've seen this scenario with players coming in. We had high expectations. They get them one last contract, and then they run off into the sunset. And if it does happen, Buck, it's not like we don't have the warnings or the signs, because he's known for this hamstring issue. So I'm just cautioning all the fans, think positive, but don't expect too much because you might get let down. That's all I'm saying. Now, if he does do above what I'm saying, then that's a bonus. But I don't want to hear the Titans fans calling in crying when it doesn't work out or he just doesn't pan out like the rest of them. I think we should be a little bit on the cautious side, and I just wanted to see what you had to say about that. Y'all have a blessed day.
Appreciate the call. I mean, listen, you can view this news however you want to view it. Like, if you're juiced about it, I'm not mad at you. If you're skeptical, okay, that's fine. Like, you can feel about DeAndre Hopkins any which way that you want to. I am curious, though, I mean, just to me, that seems like a particularly miserable way to go about sports fandom.
You know how we have BVS?
Yeah. BTS?
BTS. I don't think that's taken, is it?
BTS?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything significant in pop culture with the initials BTS.
Well,
No, I don't think so.
Not based on my understanding, but then I would age myself very, very quickly. Although I think to the people we're probably talking to, they have no idea what we're talking about.
BTS. Maybe.
See, every time I picture our average listener, just in general, I don't know why I do this, I picture Kirby.
BTS might be the most popular.
Kirby, turn your microphone on and tell me what K-pop is right now. Tell me what K-pop is.
I haven't a clue,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it's a bunch of kids hopping around on stage to synthesized music singing somebody else's song.
That's correct.
And they are a behemoth.
They're huge.
I don't doubt it.
They're the biggest international act out there right now, I think.
We do need to pipe down because
Millie?
they will come at you.
What do you mean?
I have two
They're
words.
following.
2 words. Millie Vanilli.
No, Kirby, not every new act is Milli Vanilli.
But that is Batter Titan syndrome.
That's a reference that's 20 years old, Kirby. Like that.
Oh, people know who Milli Vanilli is.
I know.
Have you seen the date on my driver's license on the birthday line?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't actually know how old you are.
Well, I can't. I'm so old.
Oh, my God.
My first birthday.
Blowing our ears out.
Are you eating popcorn while you're just absolutely maxing your mic out here? What are you doing?
Turn it all the way up.
My first driver's license, they didn't have photographs. Hell, it was paper. Tennessee driver's license used to just be this green piece of paper.
That's interesting.
You do all sorts of
BTS
things when it came
show.
to making yourself older, if you know what I mean.
615-737-1045 is the number if you would like to. What the hell are you doing over there? Get your hand out of the popcorn bag.
Turn the mic the wrong
For
direction.
God's sakes, Greg Sankey's about to speak with the media here in 6 minutes. We will carry that press conference live for you here on the show. Jeremy is calling us from Southern Illinois on DeAndre Hopkins. He's up next.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Hey, bud.
Just want to say Merry Christmas to all the Titans fans. Today feels like a holiday. I've literally been listening to 3 different been listening to the A to Z sports show, you guys, and then NFL radio as well. But I'd say that my expectations are definitely raised. I honestly feel like the 2 big ifs don't fall on DeAndre. The guy's got 3 million reasons to not walk off into the sunset and to actually do something here. And then also my ifs would be the O-line and then Treylon Burks. I'm like, if Treylon Burks and the O-line, do their thing this year, then I feel like we have better odds than we did when we had Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. I appreciate you guys.
Well, sure. I mean, yeah, if those things happen, then yeah. I mean, but right now it's impossible to predict, and that's fine. Like, you can feel as good about the Titans as you have all offseason based on this, right? It doesn't mean anything yet. I mean, it does mean something. It means that they are actively trying to better their football team in real time, and based on the period of time that we are currently in, like, that's the most important thing that they can accomplish to keep the fan base at bay, basically, to keep them off their necks, If public pressure is something that they care about at all, which seemingly they do not, based on how many times I saw that Mike Vrabel ran Carthon draft war room clip circulating of them drafting a tight end in the 5th round.
Waving at us
like, you idiots.
We know something you don't know. But while I understand the skepticism to a degree of, well, we've done this before, hasn't quite worked, so they just should stop trying, right?
Yeah,
just
that's dumb.
Stop evaluating any options at wide receiver because they're 30 or older and it hasn't worked in previous regimes.
Even
I don't think so.
If John Robinson hadn't gotten fired, my expectation of whoever's in that job, try and make the best version of your football team. I am anti-tanking. I, under no circumstances, in any way, shape, or form, would I condone that kind of a thing. One, because I think it's disrespectful as hell to the people who play the game. It's disrespectful as hell to the people whose employment relies and whose families rely specifically on that paycheck coming in on an NFL coaching staff. Why would you actively try to undermine yourself that way? And also, if you're a fan, I think it's disrespectful to you. You don't waste your time with a lousy football team that is not trying to do a word I almost said that I can't. Not bleep. I gotta get back. I gotta get back in the bleep mindset, Kirby. I'm running hot here. Anyway, that is something that I think is a flawed mindset. It is the same kind of person, I think, who is looking at a football season and saying, yeah, but for what? What are they going to do? All this to sign, it's the person who is sitting there thinking today, yeah, they signed DeAndre Hopkins. Does that mean they're going to win the Super Bowl? Well, I don't know. Maybe. This football's weird. You don't know. None of this guarantees anything, nor does it preclude you from being able to accomplish anything. This is one of the most successfully built for parity sports that exists. And a random situation that may arise, whether that's DeAndre Hopkins signing with your team in July or something happening down the road where your team is able to turn the corner and, like the Jags, start 2-6, win out basically down the stretch, back your way through a playoff win and accomplish more. Trevor Lawrence is in the top 10 listed quarterbacks this year, according to NFL executives. That's wild. After having watched that entire season, that would be the takeaway, that the quarterback is in the top 10 of his profession. The randomness of this sport is why we don't do the record predictions around here. But I do think you have to give yourself the best possible opportunity to make the postseason. If you make the postseason at that point, it's all a roll of the dice. But this move signals to me that, they're not dead, that there's a pulse, that there's a sign of life, and that all of our panic, while I do think at the time warranted with the lack of urgency around the wide receiver issue, they ultimately get the result that they need to for the time being. How it pans out, how it pays dividends, none of us can tell you in July.
If anything, the upcoming football season just got a lot more fun.
Yes.
For everybody. For fans watching it at home, for season ticket holders that are going to be at Nissan Stadium every Sunday, for us talking about it each and every day, the excitement for the 2023 season just went up. And if it didn't for you, then that's on you, right?
Imagine going into a football season and not being excited. I know I make jokes about football season scaries and chest tightness and stuff like that because that's what we do for a living and it feels like it just ended. But I'm still excited for football season because it's football.
That's what this is. That's what Media Days is. Yes, we're here to hear from Greg Sankey and hear from head coaches and certain players, but we don't come to media days anticipating to learn anything tangible, right, about these teams. Like, honestly, we don't. Like,
no, okay, it's fair.
You don't really walk away having learned a ton about whatever particular program. It's just a chance for everybody to congregate and talk about it because it's right around the corner. And it's a bit of a tease because then you got to wait over a month for the games to actually kick off. But it's just excitement. It just breeds excitement. So, yeah, if you can't get excited about the 2023 season because of DeAndre Hopkins, that's on you.
So Greg Sankey is scheduled to speak here in just a moment. We'll go live to that press conference when the commissioner gets to the podium.
He won't be speaking here this time next year.
Okay, so tell me the news on SEC Media Day.
Media Days is headed to Dallas next year. That's according to Brett McMurphy. Dallas, which, by the way, just hosted Big 12 Media Days a week ago. Last week, right there in Jerry World, on the field was Mike Gundy and Sonny Dykes and Dave
Are they going to do this at Jerry World?
I don't know. I have no idea what the venue is going to be. But Brett McMurphy reporting that it will be in Dallas. Can you tell me the distance that the nearest SEC school, and you can include Texas in this because Texas is in the SEC in 2024, the closest SEC school by driving distance to Dallas, Texas?
I don't know how far Dallas is from Austin, but I would say is Arkansas close?
Dallas and Austin are 3 hours away. Or I'm sorry, Austin and College Station are a 3-hour drive from Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, okay.
The closest SEC school is 3 hours away from where Media Days will be held next year. So there's something odd about that. All those years in Hoover, obviously, with Tuscaloosa 45 minutes down the road. All those years, or a few years in Atlanta with Athens.
Well, no, there's nothing odd about it at all. It's exactly in line with what they're doing. It's a money grab.
Sure, but it still is. It's not going to feel like, I don't know how to put it, but it is.
Yes.
It just
look at you, you college football old soul. I hate to break it to you, bud. Your conference is about to add Texas and Oklahoma because pandering and money. And that is what something like this is absolutely 100% about.
And I'm sure Greg Sankey will field questions about that here in just a couple minutes.
Well, absolutely at this point. I think there's a variety of different things that people are going to be interested to hear from Greg Sankey from. The acquisition of Texas and Oklahoma, the set schedule now that they will play for the 2024 season. But in terms of questions for this coming season about the way that this is going to run, what is probably the most pressing question that Greg Sankey has to answer?
For 2023? That's a great question because
Thank you.
I think most of what he's going to be discussing is going to be for 2024 and
right.
beyond.
No. That's because that's what the biggest news is. Yeah. So in my head, I'm used to doing press conferences. I'm like, okay, what do you got to talk about for this upcoming season? And then everybody's telling me, no, it's about 2024.
It's going to be so much about the future, about the scheduling format, about expansion, about media days taking place in Dallas, about the college football playoff. Yeah, we should play a game on how long it takes for Greg Sankey
to be asked a question about this coming season.
Now, he'll have the whole opening statement, right, in his monologue, which we'll carry on here in just a couple seconds. But, yeah, just how long it takes for somebody to ask him about the right now, the 2023 season that starts in over a month.
Bert, while we wait for Greg Sankey, tell me about Eli Drinkwitz's sunglasses.
Oh, my Lord. It looked like he just got out of a vision or some kind of optometrist meeting where they put those big-ass glasses on you because the light could mess up your eyes or something. He walked in and he looked like he was trying to be like an Elvis impersonator. I know he likes to don masks of Darth Vader and the ilk, but I don't know what the look he was going for. It was kind of like midlife crisis meets I have a new girlfriend. But you'll have to see these glasses. It was all over SEC Network, and I couldn't believe that someone let him walk out of his hotel room wearing them. But that kind of fits the build for him, right?
So me.
There's always that one coach.
They weren't cool glasses. They were like
the ones that look like horse blinders that your great aunt wears.
Kinda, but the rims and like the build of it was like gold and gaudy and large.
Mizzou, gold and black.
It was a few years ago. It was Dan Mullen with the shoes. I think with the Jordans or whatever it was. There's always that one coach that probably hasn't won a championship yet in his career that comes in with just an accessory that is going to be an attention grabber.
Ooh. Is he the most likely candidate?
Who?
To do that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of anybody?
Without a doubt. Yes. We'll talk about Mizzou in a second, because I'm conflicted. I like Eli Drinkwitz. I like that he says funny things, and I like that he has these attention-grabbing quotes, but I'm also conflicted about it because he hasn't won anything. He hasn't come close to winning anything yet as a head coach.
So Mizzou, Texas A&M, and LSU all scheduled for the podium today here at SEC Media Days as we await Greg Sankey's press conference. Let's go to break, as a matter of fact. I'm sorry. Thank you for all your help. Can people hear you, Bert, when you're doing that?
Shut up.
All right. Give me Greg Sankey.
Good morning. Welcome to Music City. It's great to be here today. I have a script, but I'm going to do something for which I have no permission, which makes everybody feel awkward. And it's not permission from my staff that matters. I'm really, really proud to stand up here and tell you that last Tuesday, my wife Kathy and I became grandparents for the first time. So in addition to boring all of you, our new granddaughter and her parents are watching me drone on and on this morning. So we'll set expectations for that relationship. It is good to be here with you today in Music City. Good to be looking towards football season. It's actually the perfect year for us to be here, not because of the construction, but because the season for us begins in Nashville, just up the road on Vanderbilt's campus on August 26th, when Hawaii visits Vanderbilt. And then the next week, we're back down Broadway across the river, 11 a.m. for Virginia and Tennessee. And then later that night, Vanderbilt plays game 2 hosting Alabama A&M. So really a good intersection of football for us in Nashville. We do something unique in the Southeastern Conference. Actually, we do a lot unique, one of which is we have started to move media days to new locations. If you take away the 2 years of COVID, we've now been Birmingham, Atlanta, and Nashville. And there are many thanks and a great deal of work. Thanks first to our staff, who spends an entire year planning to make these 4 days productive for you. Our hosts here at the Grand Hyatt Nashville, the general manager, Mark Sternagel, and the director of events, Maxine Matheson. The Nashville Convention and Visitors Corporation, the recently retired president and CEO, Butch Spiriton, and the new president and CEO, Dina Ivey. The Titans provide us a home this year at the beginning of the season, as I referenced, and always at the end of the season as we compete in a bowl game with our Big Ten colleagues. Appreciate the Titans president, Burke Nihill. We're here to talk about football, but back on Broadway, down the street, towards Lower Broadway, Bridgestone Arena is our home for basketball each March. We appreciate their ownership group, their CEO, Sean Henry, their newly named president, who's been a longtime friend back to her days at Vanderbilt, Michelle Kennedy, the Predators leadership team and the Bridgestone team for the great hospitality they provide. And both of those local professional franchises will provide you with hospitality this week as they will be hosting evening receptions for the media. And also to the Nashville Sports Council and the TransPerfect Music City Bowl and their executive director, Scott Ramsey. That's been a long-time relationship for us, and we appreciate all of that work. We're excited that tomorrow night, actually today, they're building a stage. So on one side of Broadway, you have the realization, I've been driving over steel girders every time I visited Nashville for the last few decades that are being replaced. On Lower Broadway, there's a stage being built. We'll host SEC Nation, the kickoff on Broadway, followed by a concert with the band Midland. Thank you to Regions Bank and to the Nashville Nashville Convention and Visitors Corporation for making that concert possible. It's a huge stage and one of those vision points we're excited to realize. I usually don't recognize road crews, but I appreciate the fact that progress comes with a little bit of pain. Tennessee Department of Transportation actually was really helpful, along with the locals, in coordinating the construction schedule. Progress needs to happen, it has to happen, but we appreciate TDOT and working with us and with the Hyatt and with the Convention and Visitors Corporation to ease the level of disruption that we're experiencing. You're going to hear from our coaches. I want to just point out on your schedule a few things. John McDade, our coordinator of officials, will start your morning tomorrow. You'll get to see the excitement that I see every morning during football season, so don't stay out on Broadway too late. On Wednesday afternoon, Dr. Katie O'Neill, the SEC's chief medical advisor, will be here at 3 p.m. to talk about her work with the Southeastern Conference. She started in that role a year ago. It's a unique role, and she'll have much to share. I encourage your attendance Wednesday at 3 p.m. And Thursday morning, our friends from the National Football Foundation will be here to talk about the foundation's work, talk about the College Football Hall of Fame, and we're really excited about this year's class of Hall of Fame inductees, including Tennessee's Eric Berry, Missouri's Jeremy Maclin, Florida's Tim Tebow, and a name that's special to all of us in the SEC office, Roy Kramer. Roy will be entering the College Football Hall of Fame based upon his accomplishments at Central Michigan, but his impact on the Southeastern Conference and on all of college football is worthy of Hall of Fame recognition. In fact, Wednesday evening on the SEC Network, we'll be premiering a program focused on Roy, which I know makes him enormously uncomfortable. It's entitled Roy Kramer, A Vision for the SEC. I encourage you to tune in Wednesday night at 7 p.m. on the SEC Network.
That is SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. He's currently speaking to the media. We're going to leave that press conference live for you on Zone TV, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, so you can continue to hear it. We'll come back with more pressing information from the commissioner of the SEC, live from SEC Media Days, coming up next.
Now, Vanderbilt University being located in Nashville and its impact on this community. The capital of the volunteer state is located here in Nashville, and it's a state that hosts two of our member universities. And the reality is Music City is a home to many, many students, alums, parents, family members, and fans of a particular university or SEC team. It is because of those relationships that we feel sorrow in moments of tragedy. We mourned with Nashville as we watched in horror on our television screens. In March, a mass shooting at the Covenant School that will cause us not to forget the loss of 6 innocent lives, both children and adults, today's leaders and tomorrow's leaders, senselessly killed in one individual's act of violence. We know that day, March 27th, could have been worse were it not for the quick and heroic action by members of the Nashville Metropolitan Police Department. With us today are 4 of the 5 team members who responded immediately and rapidly to the urgent call for help. And I'm going to call them up here to stay on stage one by one. First, Detective Ryan Cagle. Ryan, I'm going to have you stand here. Sergeant Jeff Mathis. Detective Zachary Plessy, and Detective Michael Colazzo. Not able to attend today is the 5th member of that quick response team from March 27th, Officer Rex Engelberg. There were hundreds of emergency personnel who ended up present at the Covenant School that day, but these 5 are those engaged with the assailant who ended the threat. I know it's not typical, although we broke protocol a moment ago. I'm going to ask you to break protocol again and join me in recognizing these gentlemen for their service to this community. At the end of the week, they've shared with me their fan preferences, so we're not going to have just one coach sign football helmets. They'll receive SEC football helmets autographed by all 14 coaches, and then we're going to invite them and a guest back to share in a relaxed way in the 2024 SEC men's basketball tournament at Bridgestone Arena as our guests. Words and gestures are one thing, but they really don't express our appreciation for the service, the leadership, and the commitment by dedicated individuals serving to help, support, and respond in times of emergency to our communities. Thank you, gentlemen. Since we gathered last year in Atlanta, we've experienced our own loss on our campuses. We've lost student athletes, we've lost head coaches, assistant coaches, athletics department staff members, along with retired leaders, coaches, and contributors, and we mourn each of those passings. Last year in Atlanta, one of my backstage conversations was about the uselessness of neckties. It was a conversation that went much longer than I anticipated and ended in the rhetorical question of why neckties survived but powder wigs went away. That conversation was with Mike Leach, and today I'm without a tie just to honor Mike's memory. You know, we lost Mike in December, a person important not simply to the Southeastern Conference, we only had him for a few seasons, but to all of college football. He was fascinating and impacted the lives of thousands of people across the college football spectrum and across his life. He provided wedding advice, evaluated Halloween candy, and if you ended up on a phone call talking about history, you had better have scheduled a great deal of time as he recited his historical knowledge. He also observed the world from a perspective that made you think, and often made you laugh, and sometimes made you just perplexed. And it's important that we remember people who've contributed, be it for the short term or the long term, to this wonderful conference. And we're going to miss Mike, but he's not going to be forgotten. Over those 12 months since our gathering in Atlanta, we've enjoyed a remarkable year. I don't have to tell you the Southeastern Conference is the only conference to have at least one team represented in each of the college football playoff events since its inception. As a conference, we've won 4 straight college football playoff national championships earned by 3 different teams. And over the past 17 years, we've had 5 programs win 13 national college football titles. For the young people who want to go pro in sports, it appears the Southeastern Conference is the place to prepare yourself for those opportunities, since in the last year, former SEC student athletes earned the #1 pick in the NFL draft, were drafted 1 and 2 in the Major League Baseball draft, #1 in the WNBA draft, and were the 2 highest drafted collegians in this year's NBA draft. For the 17th consecutive year, the SEC had the most football players drafted by the NFL, that number being 62. For an everything conference in the NBA playoffs.
I don't know what Greg Sankey's given us at the podium, paying tribute to Mike Leach at this point. Apparently the commissioner not wearing a tie to honor the former Mississippi State coach. But at this point, the press conference feels a bit infomercial-ish, so I would like to pivot if we could, and we'll come back to Greg Sankey should he say anything newsworthy throughout the course of his press conference. I'm sure it'll go on for quite some time. It's probably going to last, I would say 45 minutes to an hour typically, yeah? Something like that.
He had the Metro Nashville police officers that responded to the Covenant School shooting on stage alongside him. He has honored Mike Leach. He's touting recent SEC national champions, former SEC players plying their trade in the pros. So, yeah, a lot to get to for Greg Sankey, and I'm sure once he gets into the question portion of the press conference is when we get into some of the meat and potatoes, so to speak, on the future of the conference.
So, in the meantime, let's continue to take a look around the SEC. We'll get back to the DeAndre Hopkins stuff here in just a little bit. His intent to sign with the Titans, not officially signed with Tennessee, as of yesterday, though the news did break of them coming to terms on a contract, and the details of that contract have been reported at this point. What do we know is we do one big thing on every SEC team while we're out here at SEC Media Days. What do we know about the Missouri Tigers heading into 2023?
Year 4 for Eli Drinkwitz, 6-7 last year with a bowl loss. My one big thing for Mizzou is add some bite to the bark. It's too often that we're just talking about what Eli Drinkwitz is saying, what Eli Drinkwitz is wearing, as Robert told us, with his big framed sunglasses, not what Missouri football is actually doing. And I do think Missouri football can be an intriguing player in the SEC East, not as a contender to go to the SEC championship, but just to see who they could play spoiler for here in 2023. Because for the first time in his head coaching career, Eli Drinkwitz has hired an offensive coordinator. He has always called the plays from his time back at App State to now his time at Missouri. So similar to the conversation around Jimbo and Texas A&M, there seems to be some sort of recognition with Eli Drinkwitz that, hey, this is not quite working. He has yet to have a quarterback established throughout the entirety of one singular SEC season. He's supposed to be a quarterback's coach, an offensive mind. That's why he was hired at Missouri as, at the time, the youngest head coach in the SEC. So, Missouri, add some bite to the bark. Make us talk about what you're doing on the football field. Get over the 6-6 hump. Have a winning season for the first time in the Drinkwitz era so that we can stop talking about Missouri football as whatever funny thing Eli Drinkwitz said on Jim Rome, right, with the shots at Jeremy Pruitt, which he will, by the way.
Which he was right.
He was right. No, he said something, that'll have my record out. He will get that.
He gets the wins back. Eli Drinkwitz knew.
Although I don't know if that's how it works. Like, do you get the win back, or does that win just get taken away from Tennessee?
I think they just disappear.
Yeah, I don't think they retroactively say Missouri won the football game. Eli Drinkwitz, by the way, 0-4 against Tennessee.
Nope.
So his offense coordinator is Kirby Moore. Not Kirby Allen Kirby, but Kirby Moore, who was the offensive coordinator at Fresno State last season. Jake Haener, right? And where did he go in the NFL draft? I'm trying to remember the Fresno State quarterback.
As a day 3 pick.
Yeah, either way, developed under Kirby Moore.
Was he he did a whole photo shoot. It was because he looked like a model in these pictures that he was taking. I want to. Well, then he wouldn't have gone to the Patriots. I don't think they would allow
speaking
something like that.
Of NFL prospects, Luther Burden, the wide receiver at Missouri, is going to continue to be talked about in that regard. Former 5-star player that was convinced to stay home. He still has 2 more years of college football.
You surprised he didn't transfer?
I was a little bit surprised. You saw Dominic Lovett go out the door. Lovett and Burden made quite the tandem last season. They just didn't have a consistent quarterback throwing them the football. Lovett is now a Georgia player. Burden sticks around. They do bring in Theo Weiss, the Oklahoma transfer, who was another former 5-star. So Missouri, I don't know if this is the first time in program history, but I'd probably be pretty surprised if Missouri has ever had a point in their history with 2 former 5-star receivers on the same roster, and that's the case here with Burden and Weiss. So get them the ball, get Luther Burden the ball, because he is such an exciting talent. Figure out your quarterback between Brady Cook, Jake Garcia, and Sam Horn. That's a battle that's taking place for Missouri, who kind of has a tough schedule moving forward. Week 3 against defending Big 12 champs Kansas State. They take on Memphis that game in St. Louis, so a neutral site game. That's really a home game for Missouri. And then when you look at their Western Conference opponents, they always play Arkansas at the end of the year, and they've actually typically won that game. They have LSU as their kind of rotational for the last – this will be the last time that we have that rotational divisional, cross-divisional opponent. For them, that's LSU. It's a tough schedule, but for Missouri, it's about – do something on the football field to give us a reason to talk about you, not in front of the podium. And with that said, Eli Drinkwitz, I'm sure, will say some interesting things today.
I'll take both.
Big sunglasses.
I'll take both.
Yeah, I'll take both.
So we'll see. 7 starters coming back this year in the quarterback situation, very much in flux. We'll see how that plays out. I'm sure Eli Drinkwitz will be asked questions about all of those things when he is at the podium later today.
Media Days in Dallas next year will be at the Omni. Will not be Jerry World like the Big 12 did. I like the way the Big 12 did it. I mean, you had podium pressers at midfield, like on top of the star logo in Jerry World.
I mean, it's like the Super Bowl Monday media day where it's just a nightmare, except, probably with a third as many people and not as many costumes. Although I don't know. I feel like I expected to see I feel like I expected to see some kind of costume situation at SEC Media Days. I don't know. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Coming up next, the Titans had a plan all along. We'll talk about the DeAndre Hopkins signing with the guy that broke the news, Doug Kayed of A to Z Sports. He's going to join us in the final hour live here at the Grand Hyatt. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Free agent wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins is signing with the Tennessee Titans. The news first reported by Doug Kyed of A to Z Sports. Ian Rappaport with the contract details. 2 years, $26 million, up to $32 million with incentives. The 31-year-old caught 64 passes for 717 yards and 3 touchdowns in 9 games in 2022 with the Arizona Cardinals. Commissioner Greg Sankey speaking now as 104.5 The Zone broadcasts live all day from SEC Media Days at the Grand Hyatt, confirming that SEC Media Days in 2024 will be held in Dallas, Texas. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour already here from the Grand Hyatt. We're live for SEC Media Days. Greg Sankey, to the best of my knowledge, still at the podium, giving a lot of interesting quotes about the state of name, image, and likeness in college football, about next year's activities being in Dallas. And this is the quote. You can see these things that they're smartly tweeting out his quotes, some of his quotes, on his own Twitter account, at Greg Sankey on Twitter, of name, image, and likeness legislation and potential federal oversight that is being explored. Quote, in many ways, NIL has been a net positive for young people competing in collegiate athletics, but it has also created a series of realities that put the long-term viability of college athletics at risk. And we all know there are stories, some told, many untold, of false promises, empty commitments, NIL agreements, unfulfilled inducements, offered but not provided, and other behaviors that rightly cause concern.
Florida.
You taking shots?
I mean, there's not a more public example of this than Florida and the saga with quarterback recruit Jaden Rashada, who's now at Arizona State.
Well, you got a tremendous amount of side-eye from somebody in a shirt and tie that just walked out of the restroom, so I hope that was a Florida SID. That would make me happy.
Well, spot the lie.
But yes, that is correct. So at this point, we will keep you updated with anything newsworthy that Greg Sankey says as we continue to cover DeAndre Hopkins' intent to sign with the Tennessee Titans, not yet under contract, for those of you who are waiting for the team to officially announce it. That deal has not yet been completed, though the expectation is, after the news was announced, and of course the terms agreed upon, that he will sign that deal and become a member of the team within the next couple of days. So, at this point, Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel, big right, with the way that they handled us throughout the course of the draft process and free agency, with the questions that they rightly had to field about the lack of urgency, it appeared, around the wide receiver position. Drafted 6 players, all on offense, in this year's draft. They apparently didn't realize it until about a half hour before they met with all of us, or at least to hear Ran Carthon tell it, that they had gone all 6 picks on offense, and then realized that that the wide receiver, or understood that the wide receiver that was on their board was right where they thought he'd be in the 7th round, but that there was not necessarily anything beyond following the board. What was the line? Play the board and
roll the dice, play the board.
Roll the dice, play the board. And
which this was the definition of rolling the dice, right? Stretching it out to where if you do or don't land DeAndre Hopkins, completely changes the tenor of how your fan base views the upcoming season.
Now, I don't know that there would be as much visceral reaction as there would be apathy here, right? New England, they're pissed. New England, the reaction is, what the hell is his problem? Oh, he doesn't care about winning rings. That seems to be the general consensus based on my Twitter mentions from people who are fighting with Titans fans about DeAndre Hopkins' intent to sign with here over the Patriots. My understanding of that, and Mike Reese had first reported that the Titans had been more aggressive. My understanding from New England side of things, and we'll speak to Doug Kyed, who broke the news momentarily, but on New England side of things, that they wanted DeAndre Hopkins, but at their price. Not that they were willing to extend themselves to a degree the way that the Titans did, financially incentivizing him with a deal, a contract, a 2-year contract, that got him up to $32 million with very easily attainable goals.
Which no one should be surprised by, right? That's the way New England does business.
Yes, correct. Except for the Patriots fans who understand that they no longer have Tom Brady and something needs to be done. And the biggest contract for a wide receiver that you've given out can't be Nelson Aguilar.
But that's part of why Titans fans probably should have had some degree of confidence if it was indeed Titans versus Patriots, which it has been this entire time. No other team has entered this. That it's not that hard to win a bidding war against the New England Patriots.
Correct. And Jeremy Fowler said that that Andy Reid had been in contact with DeAndre Hopkins, but ultimately the timeline for the Chris Jones extension that would allow them to free up cap space to actually try and pursue DeAndre Hopkins, the timeline has not worked out to that way. So this is the most likely landing spot. This was the most likely landing spot. This is the place that it ultimately comes to fruition, or will, as soon as the ink is dried on the deal that he has yet to sign.
Still a little surprised it's already happened, if I'm being honest.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I mean, that tells you he probably did not have high hopes on if Kansas City did come forward, what that number would be, which is probably fair.
Well, and it speaks to the thing that we knew the entire time, which is it's the money. It's not the competitiveness of the team that he's going to. It's the money that he stands to make at this late stage of his career. That's what ultimately guided his decision in the most clear and obvious way. So for those of you who are saying, oh, he would rather make the money than chase a ring, yes. That is the answer to the question. That doesn't mean that they can't be a competitive football team, nor that it's a Vic Beasley type of situation, right, where Vic Beasley, to hear players on that 2020 Titans team tell it, was that there to cash in a final check if he could, and not necessarily interested in the actual football activities that came associated with that money. So at this point, Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon proven right. Here was the audio. If we can hear from Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel on the question that Mike Vrabel was asked specifically was after the draft. This is Saturday afternoon, late Saturday afternoon, on the final day of the NFL draft. And Mike Vrabel has asked a question: have you done enough at the wide receiver position? And this is his response.
Going into Monday, it will be. Yeah, and we're going to continue to explore and find ways to improve our roster and make it as competitive as possible. So on Monday it will be. We felt good if, for us to add a receiver, we would have come far off our board at those certain levels, and that's what I'm happy about. You guys are going to trust us. We're going to put players in here that are going to help us win.
That last part kind of goes back to the previous question. You're going to find ways to improve your roster. Free agency's over and the draft's over. Aren't those the places to improve your roster?
Free agency's not. They're going to let us sign free agents Monday. They will. Chad will. Rand will. They'll let us sign free agents on Monday. Free agency is going to go all the way up until the season starts. There'll be players that are on other teams that will become available Monday. Take a look. It'll be real large waiver wire. We'll scour that. We'll continue to look for trade possibilities and opportunities. Chad and Vin will help us with the salary cap, find ways to open up salaries so that we can potentially sign other players. There's been a pretty good process here, and I'm excited about it.
I always love when he ends a question with, I'm excited about it, in the least excitable way humanly possible, because what he basically spent, a minute and a half telling us is, no, you idiots. There's still plenty more players that are going to be out there, even if it wasn't. Now, it makes a difference that this particular player is DeAndre Hopkins, because at the time he was not available. But, I mean, Mike, is that Vrabel's version of RELAX with Aaron Rodgers a couple of years ago? I think that was before one of his MVP seasons, where there was great concern around Aaron Rodgers or great concern around the Packers, and he came out and said at a press conference, spelling out the word relax.
Yeah.
We've got this. And I think that when he says you guys are going to trust us, it's hard for me to, even in retrospect, I trust him that he is going to make the decisions that he thinks are in the best interest of the competitiveness of the football team. I do trust him in that element. I don't think that I can give them the benefit of the doubt, even as they have now signed DeAndre Hopkins, that there is going to be the requisite urgency around the wide receiver position based on precedent. based on precedent, that's not something that I can necessarily assign to that organization. They have done this move. It is going to quiet a lot of people. I'm sure there will be moments of there will be flashpoints throughout the course of the season where whether DeAndre Hopkins has a down game or something like that, or injuries arise as they always do in the NFL. Whatever the case may be, it may not be the most smooth process, but like I do trust him in one part of that, even as I know on the back half of things that they ultimately landed the best possible player that was available at the position at any point. At any point.
Yeah,
he's a better wide receiver than Juju. Who's the guy that signed with the Raiders? Josh McDaniels, the former Patriots wide receiver.
Aguilar? Is he back with the Raiders?
No. I mean, he might be, but there was a Patriots wide receiver on an expiring contract. I want to say Jacoby something maybe. Anyway.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's going to kill me.
The point is you don't know these people, and that was the best available wide receiver free agent out there this year. Now, I'm sure fantasy football players everywhere are screaming at us.
It's going to kill. He had Jacoby Myers.
See, I got it, Jacoby. I got it halfway right, but that's my point. Like, DeAndre Hopkins is clearly and obviously better than any player at the position that signed a contract in free agency this year.
So the skepticism is like, okay, so you're telling me that the Sunday after the NFL draft back in early May when DeAndre Hopkins is still an Arizona Cardinal, that you're saying, hey, everybody relax, we're going to get D-Hop, right? Like, yeah, I'm with you that is tough to believe.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I wonder what was going through their minds as far as the degrees of options, because clearly they knew that this can't be it.
Well,
right? We're not going to compete at a high level with this.
But to go back to your point about Rand Carthon, roll the dice and play the board, like they put a lot of eggs specifically into this basket, and the backup was Chris Moore. So, while they did ultimately land the player that everybody wanted them to, even if it wasn't necessarily in the fashion that they thought, however you thought DeAndre Hopkins might end up on another roster that wasn't Arizona, right? Like, they did put a lot of trust into that particular situation coming to fruition. Of course, they have far more information on it at any given point than we do, as Mike Vrabel is evident with Pat McAfee on the golf course yesterday saying, because some of Pat's guys are out there doing stand-up interviews at Lake Tahoe where they play, it's like the American Century Classic, I think is the celebrity golf course or golf tournament that they play in every year. And McAfee's, I don't want to call them lackeys. That seems disrespectful. But McAfee's crew is out there doing stand-up man-on-the-street interviews, and Vrabel is one of the people that they interview. And they go up to him and say, Coach, we
have the audio.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
That would be a much cleaner way to explain
it
this.
would.
Can I hear from Mike Vrabel, please?
I'm checking in here with Pat and Titans head coach Mike Vrabel. Coach, I don't know if you heard the news.
No, I did know the news. I'm the head coach. I knew the news.
Okay, so you are
I actually knew the news yesterday.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
So he was sandbagging us all day.
The whole nine. I didn't want to give it to you.
The whole front nine, we were asking, hey, D-Hop going to Tennessee?
We'll see.
Stop asking. Yeah.
We'll see.
And congratulations.
Looks like it happened. Thanks, buddy.
That's awesome. Good news.
We got to play some guys.
Yeah, you got to play the Colts, too, 2 times this year. Welcome back to the AFC South, D-Hop.
So that's courtesy of Pat McAfee's Twitter account. Mike Vrabel holding it from his golf partners for 9 holes on Sunday morning as they finish their round at the American Century Classic at this point. 615-737-1045 is the number. The guy who broke the news, Doug Kyatt, is going to join us coming up next. Two Rivers Ford has been doing it here in Middle Tennessee as a locally owned and operated business for 40 years. That's because they have award-winning customer service. That's because they deliver quality American-made Ford vehicles at the best possible prices, not just for the last 40 years, but of course into the future with you as their customers. The Ford F-150, as a matter of fact, it's been the best-selling truck for 46 years, and Two Rivers Ford has been selling the F-150 Ford dealer in their community. They have been the leading F-150 Ford dealer in their community for their entire existence. Two Rivers Ford has a selection of F-150s on the lot right now, and they're all priced below MSRP. You see, Two Rivers Ford always sells for the best price. Like I told you, their trucks are clearly marked, no gimmicks, no shenanigans, just an honest deal and a speedy process. And, did I mention, Two Rivers Ford has non-commissioned salespeople, so you'll never be pressured. I, myself, am a customer of Two Rivers Ford. I got my 2022 Ford Explorer, as is Dawn Davenport, who has just arrived at SEC Media Days. The queen of SEC Media Days, Brent Doherty, here as well. Either way, Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet will get you the best value on the best vehicles with the best customer service out there. TwoRiversFord.com. Welcome back here live at SEC Media Days at the Grand Hyatt in downtown Nashville. We're happy to have you. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion at any point. Doug Kayed of the Boston Herald is joining us now on 1045 The Zone. He broke the biggest story of this summer in the NFL, DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Patriots. Not yet officially official, not yet completely under contract, but the intent to sign, the terms agreed upon, and Doug joins us now on 1045 The Zone. Hey, bud. Or maybe he doesn't. Joseph, is Doug there?
I'm right here with you,
I can't
Buck.
hear Doug.
Can you hear me now?
I sure can. Hey, bud.
Just want to correct you real quick. You said signing with the Patriots, signing with the Titans. I know
Did I say signing with the Patriots?
You did say that. I'm very glad that's not the story I broke, because then I'd be in a lot of trouble right now. Boston Herald might be turning me away. But yes, signing with the Titans.
Okay, well done by me. Excellent work. So yes, that is something that is important to clarify. Well done by you, Doug. All right, so my understanding that this started to really gain traction at some point late last week. What details can you share with the audience about how real that was and what ultimately led them to doing this deal between the best available wide receiver at any point this offseason and a team who, typically does not garner a lot of attention for their wide receiver room?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It seems like things really started to pick up, early to mid last week. I think that's when the Titans seemed to have a pretty good idea that this was going to be done, that Hopkins had been beginning to make his decision. And, ultimately, I think it really just did come down to money for DeAndre Hopkins, and that the Patriots weren't willing to go where the Titans were. I think that, given the state of the Titans wide receiver room, Hopkins has a pretty good chance of hitting some of the incentives that are in his contract. So I think that plays into it as well. He would have had more competition for targets on a team like the Patriots. But I think it's a great deal for the Titans. I think that there's some upside there for DeAndre Hopkins, and it seems like it worked out very well for both of those parties. Not so sure about the Patriots though.
Again, with the Boston Herald and you being on the Patriots beat there, I imagine the tenor in New England without signing DeAndre Hopkins is something that has been, shall we say, fraught in the last 24 hours. What has been the reaction by the fan base there in New England?
I think that some fans are maybe in denial we didn't want him anyway. We never wanted DeAndre Hopkins, when in reality, DeAndre Hopkins would have given the Patriots a much better shot at a playoff spot, and to be competitive in a now pretty dangerous AFC East that features Aaron Rodgers and ascending Miami Dolphins team, Buffalo Bills, everything like that. Yeah, so I think most fans are disappointed. I think that they had an idea, and I think that everyone kind of had an idea that once DeAndre Hopkins was out of the building, once he was out of Foxborough, the chances of him signing with New England dropped precipitously. So I'm not sure how much hope Patriots fans had that he was actually going to be coming to New England, but they absolutely could have used him. New England still does have a lot of pass-catching talent on their team, a lot of starting caliber players, but they're just missing that DeAndre Hopkins type. They're missing that number one type wide receiver like DeAndre Hopkins, and they're just going to have to now survive without that in their offense. They could add maybe other offensive firepower elsewhere, but clearly they're not going to be getting a wide receiver of Hopkins caliber.
Doug Kayed of the Boston Herald is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. He broke the biggest story of this summer, DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Tennessee Titans. Got it right that time, Doug. We're discussing it here with him now. Any other rumblings around teams? Carolina was rumored to be interested in DeAndre Hopkins. Kansas City, whether that was real or something that was a more interesting talking point on television, is something that I have my questions about, given their cap situation and the timeline for the Chris Jones extension not really lending itself to being truly in this race. Was it always between Tennessee and New England to you?
I think that those were the two realistic teams for me, especially just because those were the teams that he took the visits to. I mean, he wasn't in Carolina. He didn't go to Kansas City, and I think that was an important part of this, at least early in the process. That those were the two teams that were very heavily involved. Those are the teams that had offers on the table and everything like that. So I don't know. I didn't take the Chiefs news when those rumblings came out very seriously, and Carolina. I mean, I don't know. It would have given him a chance to be closer to where he went to college and everything like that. But that was never a team that made a great deal of sense to me. I think it makes more sense for him to be in Tennessee. So I do think that, the Titans and the Patriots, those were the two teams near at the top there. And everyone else was kind of, a little bit further behind.
New England doesn't spend on wide receivers, famously. I mean, I know Belichick had a spending spree, or the organization had a spending spree a couple of years ago. Notably, one of the Titans free agents went and signed a big contract there, and he's now an Atlanta Falcon in Jonnu Smith. That did not materialize the way I imagine many in that part of the world thought it would. So, anytime you hear the idea of a bidding war, if you want to call it that, against a team like the Patriots, it doesn't sound like they were interested in him beyond what they wanted at, or wanting him at their specific price. It didn't seem like they were much interested at all in moving off that price point, the way that Tennessee obviously showed some flexibility and incentive. Incentives that were very, as you said, achievable for him to be able to cash in at a rate that he's more accustomed to.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way that Bill Belichick negotiates, is that he's got his price and he doesn't necessarily want to come off of that. And that's with outside free agents. That's with interior free agents. There's a story years ago of, Julian Edelman not taking an initial offer from the Patriots and Bill Belichick being like, all right, go ahead, take your visit with the New York Giants or whoever it was at the time. And then Edelman kind of have to crawling back and be like, okay, I'll take the offer on the table there. So that's pretty much the way that the Patriots operate. And Bill Belichick just loves a value. Like when they attended Odell Beckham Jr.'s workout back in, I think it was, March or April or whatever that was, I reached out at the time and been like, is this realistic? Are you guys really going to sign Odell Beckham Jr.? I was basically like, well, if he's a value, then yes. But if it's anything more than that, then no. And obviously it's worked out pretty well for Bill Belichick over the last 23 years. But players like DeAndre Hopkins don't necessarily want to take a value contract if Tom Brady's not at quarterback and if you're not insured a possibility for a Super Bowl. So at some point, Bill Belichick might need to come off this way of thinking, especially for wide receiver talent, because like I said, they've got a lot of starting caliber players at wide receiver and tight end, and Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Tyquan Thornton, Juju Smith-Schuster. They just don't have that number one guy. So it's going to be a lot of spreading the ball around for Mac Jones this year. But for years and years and years, teams that won the Super Bowl are the ones who didn't pay up for wide receiver. And now you're seeing that change a little bit, and teams who are paying for wide receivers are the ones who are making the Super Bowl. They are the ones who are winning the Super Bowl. So I'm curious to see if that ever does shift for Bill Belichick, or if he retires before he's willing to.
Doug Coyote of the Boston Herald is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. He broke the news yesterday. DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Tennessee Titans on a 2-year deal. A lot of the feedback that I've seen, or a lot of the discussion around that I've seen, this signing in particular, not just that at the base level, the competitiveness of the two teams within their respective divisions, but the quarterback play that each of them offer. Mac Jones, obviously the product of a very, very bad situation last year, and I would argue, Doug, my opinion, not yours as an objective journalist, but that built one of Bill Belichick's dumbest decisions with the way that they handled the offensive coordinator situation for a developmental player the way that Mac is. Is Mac Jones, in your opinion, a superior option to Ryan Tannehill, or were you as surprised as I was, the feedback saying that Ryan Tannehill, or at least from Patriots fans, saying that Ryan Tannehill was the inferior option? I understand there's a little bit of previous AFC East biases that might still be there.
I mean, I think that Ryan Tannehill is a safer quarterback for DeAndre Hopkins to be playing with. I think that's a safer option to hit some of those incentives and play with, just because he's had a number of seasons better than Mac Jones' best season, which was his rookie year. And it was a great rookie year. He was, statistically one of the better rookie seasons of all time. But then he took this major drop off last season. I think that most of that can be accounted for the fact that Matt Patricia and Joe Judge were running the offense. That was a very poor decision by Bill Belichick. He's fixed that now with Bill O'Brien, but there's still no certainty that Mac Jones is going to be top half quarterback in the NFL this season. He was one of the worst last season, a bottom 2 quarterback under pressure last year. It was basically him and Zach Wilson. The offensive line has not gotten considerably better. They certainly have better coaching, like I said, in Bill O'Brien as offensive coordinator, Adrian Clem as offensive line coach. They're really taking over for Matt Patricia and Joe Judge in those 2 spots. But even, people that I talk to around the team, around Mac Jones, no one looks at this as a guarantee that Mac Jones is suddenly going to become better than he was as a rookie, or even to the level that he was as a rookie. Because I think there's some growing up that Mac Jones has to do. And even in the spring, when Mac Jones was talking to reporters and Kendrick Bourne and all these guys, it still felt like they were kind of taking shots a little bit about those offensive decisions that Bill Belichick made in 2022. It just feels like everyone has to get over that. Everyone has to just be happy that Bill O'Brien is there now, get over the past. Like, one quote that Mac Jones gave was, there were some reports out there that he wasn't talking much to Bill Belichick and that most of his contact has been with Bill O'Brien. And when Mac Jones was answering that, he was like, I really talked to Bill Belichick a lot about the defense. That's his specialty. That's what he's really good at on defense. And Bill Belichick is a guy who was heavily involved in the offense last year. And it was just like, your quarterback can't be saying those types of things about the head coach. So that's what I'm curious about now in the summer, is if everyone has moved past that, if we see more contact between Mac Jones and Bill Belichick, because I really do think that beyond just what Mac Jones does on the field, how he handles himself off the field is going to be just as important to his success this season.
Doug Kayat is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're talking about the Titans signing, or getting ready to sign, DeAndre Hopkins, agreeing to terms with DeAndre Hopkins at this point. The question mark of Bill O'Brien's impact on whatever decision might have gone down, was that a convenient talking point, or is it an equitable, an easy, or is at least the relationship in a better place than it was when Bill O'Brien, as the Houston Texans head coach, famously traded away DeAndre Hopkins for reasons that were, I think questionable at best? How big a role did that play in any decision, if at all?
I don't think it was an impediment, but I think that if the decision was close, I don't know, you'd probably rather not play for the guy who traded you away for a second-round pick in David Johnson. I think that it wasn't going to be a deciding factor for DeAndre Hopkins to take less money to play for the Patriots and then play for the coach that traded him away. I think that it certainly was a possibility. He still came to New England for the visit. It was still a possibility that he would have signed with the Patriots. So I'm not sure how big of a factor it ultimately played with what was on the table, what the decision was for DeAndre Hopkins. But I would imagine that if it's close, you'd probably rather not play for the guy again. And, there was connections on both teams, obviously with Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly and everything like that. So there was familiarity on both sides with the teams offering DeAndre Hopkins. But Bill O'Brien obviously was the closest connection that you had there. And maybe the most uncomfortable connection. But I know that, O'Brien would have been on board with bringing Hopkins on. Hopkins at least was on board enough to play for O'Brien to come to New England. So certainly didn't seem like it was that big of an impediment. But I don't know. It's got to play a tiny bit of a factor.
He's Doug Kayat. He covers the Patriots for the Boston Herald. Doug, I know our time as co-workers was brief, but congratulations on the scoop. Well done by you. And I appreciate you spending some time with us here, buddy. Congratulations on the new gig. Happy for you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was great working with you for the brief time, and had to give A to Z, one more parting gift on the way out to break the Hopkins story for A to Z Sports.
Well, Austin and Zach like them clicks. Well done by you. Doug Kayat with us there on 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the discussion if you would like to react to anything that you just heard from Doug there. That's been the biggest point of contention for me with this whole Patriots-Titans, whom would Hopkins rather play for and who is actually the more competitive roster. There is no disputing to me that the quarterback situation, the better quarterback situation, is here. no matter what you think of Ryan Tannehill, the idea that you would hold up Mac Jones as being the superior situation is laughable. Laughable, no matter how entrenched in your biases is, no matter how big a Patriots fan or Alabama fan you are, no matter how little you think of Ryan Tannehill. Like, it is indisputable across a small sample size for Mac and a considerably larger one for Ryan Tannehill that this is the better quarterback situation. I would, hear arguments on the Patriots having a better collection of skill position players around him. I certainly think they have a better offensive line unit. They're probably, as a running game, going to be fine, and they'll always play good defense as long as Bill Belichick is the head coach. But it is laughable that there would be any argument against DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Titans by nature of the quarterback position. 615-737-1045. We're going to continue covering SEC Media Days. Lucas is going to be back to talk about LSU. The 3HL crew has arrived. I have not seen them since last Thursday night's bowling event, which, by the way, very, very grateful to everybody who came out and supported that. It was an awesome time. I know I wasn't in here on Friday because I took the day off. Kirby is shrugging his shoulders at me because Kirby doesn't think I've worked a day in my life, and he's probably right. But, I just wanted to pass along my incredible thanks and appreciation for all of you who showed up to the event, and I would do so on behalf of Home Street Home, the organization who we helped raise some money for, Stephen and Andy Young, and the great work that they're doing for the homeless community. We'll continue the conversation. Last call for phone calls. One big thing on LSU and some poll questions coming up next. Welcome back live from SEC Media Days here on 104.5 The Zone. Last segment for us. The Hitman, Mickey Ryan, they're both in the building, so is 3HL. Show goes on this radio station for the rest of the week. All 4 shows are here hanging out at the Grand Hyatt, and we're happy to be doing so. 615-737-1045 is the number. Last call for phone calls if you got them. We've done LSU. We've done Mizzou. Texas A&M is at the, well, Jimbo apparently has spoken.
No, Jimbo has not spoken.
Oh, what quotes were you alleging that you are referring to when you said that we had Jimbo Fisher on Bobby Petrino?
We do have Jimbo Fisher on Bobby Petrino from back at spring practice.
Oh, good.
As we do one big thing for every SEC program that is in attendance on that particular day at Media Days. Today is Mizzou, LSU, and Texas A&M. So, for Jimbo Fisher, that is, and we have some breaking Titans news.
Yep. They are dropping the assault case against Rashad Weaver. For those of you who remember going back a couple of years ago at this point, Rashad Weaver, the Titans edge rusher, former Pitt product, in the draft process, or it might have been on the draft night if I remember the details correctly. He was alleged to have pushed a woman down. There was a corresponding legal situation as a result. The prosecution, according to Paul Kaharski, has dropped the assault case against the Titans outside linebacker. So nothing there on that front that will inhibit him in the future. By the way, for those of you asking, the Hassan Haskins situation still ongoing. No decision by either the team or the league on the running back's future for that assault charge by strangulation that we saw.
There is a court date for that, right? In late August.
Yes, I would have to find the specific date for you, but there is a court date.
It is right around the time of, if I'm not mistaken, right before roster cut day, or maybe or right after roster cut day, one or the other.
I will effort that information while you tell people about Texas A&M.
The one big thing for Texas A&M after a dreadful season in 2022, 5-7, everybody remembers the collapse. Can Jimbo let go? Can he let go of the play calling duties, of the 40 sheets of paper he seems to have in his hand on the sideline at every Texas A&M football game? Hiring Bobby Petrino as offensive coordinator was the first step. Letting him do his job is a whole other thing. So this is the audio that I was referencing. Do you have an answer for that?
August 30th.
August 30th. This is the audio I was referencing from Jimbo Fisher when asked about the play calling duties on offense back during spring football.
And what about who makes the play calls? Would that be him or you?
Yeah, I mean, we'll go through that as we go.
Go back to the back.
Plan on him making calls. Plan on him calling plays. I have no problem with that at all.
I have no problem. What? You think I have a problem? I don't have a problem. Yeah, we'll go through it. Well, he'll make the calls. Maybe we'll go through it. I don't have a problem. So Jimbo Fisher,
I just love the idea of him babbling there at the end. I don't have a problem. Yeah. You have a problem. What do you mean? He'll call plays.
Cutting off the next reporter and asking his question. You feel like it went through in Jimbo's head. Oh no, that's going to go viral. Yeah. I have no problem him calling plays. Look.
Well, I mean, and it's even more egregious that there was not an immediate follow-up by the reporter. Hey, what? What are you talking about?
Man, this offense averaged under 23 points per game in 2022. It was absolutely dreadful. So it's not just about giving Bobby Petrino play calling duties. Like, that's all well and good, and that's happening, and they're humming along. But what about in like the Alabama game last year? 4th down, game on the line, last play. It's coming down to the offense in the red zone. You need a touchdown to win. You going to take it back? Yeah. Right? Are you going to be in his ear, or are you going to let him do his thing? Bobby Petrino, who has won games in this league as a head coach, right, who has won games as an offensive coordinator, a great offensive mind, are you going to let him do his job? Because this team, as we all know, has the talent profile of a national title contender. They should be contending for national championships. They return a stable of running backs that does not include Devin Achane. They add some talented freshmen in that regard. Otherwise, they return 10 starters on the offensive side of the ball. Connor Wegman will look to take another step as the quarterback. Evan Stewart, one of the more exciting freshman receivers last year, will come in as wide receiver 1 in 2023. So a lot of eyes are on Texas A&M as this sleeping giant in the SEC for good reason. Like, talent wins you championships. A lot of other things have to happen, but you don't get to win without the talent. So you cannot acquire the talent and then fumble it the way Texas A&M has in recent years. So for me, that is bar none the biggest storyline around Texas A&M football in 2023. Can Jimbo let go because he has a very capable play caller? This is not like a 25, 26-year-old, up-and-comer in his first OC. This is Bobby Petrino.
Yeah.
Like Bobby, who has been the head coach of SEC West programs, of NFL programs.
It's so funny to see guys like Kevin Steele and Bobby Petrino still wandering around.
And I think Bobby Petrino wants to be a head coach again.
I'm certain.
I don't think he takes this job if that's not the trajectory he wants to go on. So
these people don't ever stop wanting to be head coaches.
So that is, for me, by far the biggest question mark for a team that should have the expectation of college football playoff contender. And by the way, LSU is in town. Let me remind you, do you remember the last game of the regular season, what Texas A&M did against LSU?
No.
They beat them pretty good. Texas A&M beat LSU in that last game because they were headed right towards 4-8. So I do think that is something for Texas A&M fans, a glimmer of hope that all the talent is there. You bring in Bobby Petrino, you return your quarterback in Connor Wegman, who's only a sophomore. This team did not throw the season in the trash midway through last year when everything was going wrong. They went in and they beat the SEC West champs and Brian Kelly and LSU. There is reason for hope there that this team did not give up and throw in the towel on Jimbo Fisher when everything was at the bottom of the barrel, when they went in expecting to already be contending for an SEC title after that number one recruiting class.
Jimbo's just such an easy target.
I just love listening to Jimbo talk. I don't care what it's about. Like, I don't know. I think I'm most intrigued to hear Kirby Smart based on the questions he's going to have to answer this year with everything happening around the program. But I am most interested to hear Jimbo talk just as far as literally listening to him speak at that high-pitched, frenetic Southern pace that he seems to constantly be in when he's at the podium.
He sounds, even if he's not, he just sounds a bit unhinged, which is delightful to me.
Love that.
All right. What time is it?
51.
Polls.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. What is the Titans' ceiling with DeAndre Hopkins in 2023? Jake says 12-5 due to the much weaker schedule than years past. He says the floor is 7-10. He says probably a 10-17 with a good chance at winning the division. Mahogany says the ceiling is playoffs. Austin says the ceiling is AFC South champs. Rand says the ceiling is number one seed in AFC.
Okay, well, you can have whatever expectation of them that you like. I expect them to be able to compete for a division. That is as far as I will go. But, if you want to go Super Bowl, if you want to go number one overall seed, whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy. It's July, baby.
Vols fans, which of the 11 vacated wins from 2019 and 2020 will you miss the most? Josh says the Gator Bowl over Indiana. That was insane. That was a crazy game. I was curious about that for you. You lost a bet in that game, so you had to shave your head.
That's correct.
As opposed to if Indiana had won, and David Reed would have had to shave his beard.
Yep.
So do you retroactively win that bet now that win is vacated?
Ooh, I should call David Reed and make that case. I would still.
I'm sure he'll be very open to it.
Well, for the months that I look like male genitalia with my head shaved, I think there should have to be a retroactive punishment for David Reed. I see you, Reed, if you're out there. I see you.
What is the biggest storyline this week at SEC Media Days? JDH says, number one, Kirby and UGA. 1A is Saban seemingly not having an elite quarterback.
Yeah, no. Honestly, the Alabama quarterback situation is fascinating. The more that you kind of dive into that, and I'm not going to assign any meaning to it other than they're continuing to look for better competition at the quarterback position. But it is notable that Tyler Buckner in there is just as big an unknown as the other two, I think, at this point, based on the injury situation and what did not come to fruition last year at Notre Dame for him, for obvious reasons. Yeah, the Alabama quarterback situation is interesting.
Coaches will continue to be talking about NIL throughout the course of the week. That is one significant thing Greg Sankey said today. He is entirely putting the onus on Congress to create some uniformity across the board on name, image, and likeness. Vol's dad says this should be number one, but it's going to be Tennessee and the punishments, and hope people want us to lose the football program for it now, despite NIL being legal. We will get to all of the intricacies of the Jeremy Pruitt recruiting scandal because much of it is absolutely hilarious.
I hear you have some details that I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah, who benefits the most from the DeAndre Hopkins signing? Matt says Ryan Tannehill's therapist. Charlie says
he did have to get some help after the 2021 playoff.
Darren says Derrick Henry. Mahogany says my jersey collection. Michael says talk shows, which is not entirely incorrect. And Rand says Titans fans. Lachette says Burks, which we can certainly dive into more later this week.
The answer to that, all of those, is yes.
Those are the polls.
That's the show. We're going to be here at SEC Media Days through Thursday as this event continues to roll on. 104.5 The Zone will continue to be live on location with Blaine and Mickey, 3HL after that. You guys have a great rest of your afternoon. We'll talk more Hopkins tonight on the Primetime Show.